All right, Chad Hammer, welcome to Grimdark Enlightenment. I'm Kevin Deanna. I'm here with Chad.
What's up, folks?
And today we are going to be talking about World War I, the Great War, and the impact it's had on 40K. Because obviously you can talk about World War II. We've talked in the past about how the Blitz and the attack on London probably had a big part in the siege of Tara and everything else. But really, I think World War I was probably bigger in terms of defining the setting. When you think of grim darkness...
And being a major cultural influence for picture of something that's soulless, that's oh shit. Keep going, buddy.
What?
Pressing forward.
Edit that part out.
Yeah, no.
All right.
We want you, the viewer, to have the authentic 8-shit experience.
This is what happens when you're drinking heavily before it goes on. Smooth transition, right? Yeah. No, I think that it did have a bigger impact on World War II because here's the fundamental story of 40K. If you take the biggest step back, even forget the religious stuff for a second, Paradise Lost, fine, whatever. But it's fundamentally a British story, and it's about faded imperial glory, right? And when did that end?
Yeah,
when did the bloom come off the rose?
Of high civilization, of sort of this era of
infinite hopefulness.
Of hope, of royalty, of nobility, the war was so anachronistic in so many ways because at the beginning of it, you have people that look like they could have been in Napoleon's army on the French side, in the red pants and like the bright tunics, everything, riding horses with the polished silver gorgets,
right?
And they were just like charging into fucking machine guns. It didn't really pan out too great,
but we've also seen
but it looked like it. It was the same time period, and so while this is going on, you have like very industrial kind of proto-modern war, and really you can say modern because you look at Ukraine, Russia shit.
Yeah, return to form.
We're back in fucking trenches. We're back at defense, being king and trying to bait people into engaging you while you're in a defensive situation. But you had that going on at the same time. You had like kings, and queens and czars, and people like the Crown Prince Ruprecht being given the 6th Army in Germany just because your name was Crown Prince. Actually, his whole name is in here. Folks, I actually did prep. I have notes. You're never going to believe it. I don't think Kevin did believe it.
You've ever seen that photo of all the crown heads of Europe? I forget who was getting married, but they're at a wedding. And there was 9 of them. Yeah. And they're like all there. And of course they all look alike because they're all like kind of related and everything
this dude frankly looked like a fucking stud. He looked like a decent dude, but his full title, it was like some Idi Amin shit. It was like paragraphs long. Crown Prince Ruprecht, Crown Prince of Bavaria, Duke of Bavaria, Franconia and Swabia, Count Palatine by the Rhine.
Man, it was a better time.
It was a better fucking time.
Democracy sucks. I mean, like, this is the fundamental problem.
I want a Crown Prince Baron Trump. Just give him like a whole division of the army.
Yeah, right.
Hey, you're
just
in charge.
Just like leaves everybody in a total slaughter. It's fine.
And as we'll get to, this guy did some pretty cool. So he kind of blew some plans, but he did a pretty good job. Of doing his job.
Didn't he accidentally win? That was the problem.
Yeah, he was too good. His issue really was he was too fucking good. We'll get there. Because we had prep, we will try to stick to something going on. So
it's totally going to fall apart immediately.
I'll be leafing through, but I would throw shit all over the fucking place.
But I would say this: the big story too is if you think of when European civilization peaked. I mean, everybody's going to have their own thing, but I'd say probably the Belle Epoque, like right before World War I, and you had technology, racially, Europeans conquered the world. Right, conquered the world. Like, we ran the world.
Imperialism was in full swing.
Everybody, if you read what was the kinds of ideas being discussed at all the universities,
everything was on the up. It was possible because everyone was on the up.
And like, there were social problems.
Industrial capabilities were cranked way up. Everyone's ability to engage in things like to the nth degree was turned. You can't get something like this without all participants being at a spot where they can basically fight like to the power of fucking 10. Yeah. Your shit has to be in overdrive all the time to be able to pull this shit off. And they did for like a substantial period of time.
There's this quick quote from I'm trying to remember who said, but it was a British observer who was talking about what happened with World War One, and then how you could never get that again. It's like to get the kind of sacrifices that you got with World War One, it's a whole thing. I mean, it's the school assemblies, it's the churches you went to, it's the sermons that you listened to.
You had to have
it's this respectable morality that everybody believed in. Right. Yeah, and so when that broke up, I mean, it really killed the entire civilization, and everything else has just been the inevitable aftermath, which is basically 40K.
Right.
Because if you really get down to it, it's the Horus Heresy, broke it, ended it, broke it. And it's just been a long, slow decline ever since. And the decline may be for 30,000 years, but that's what it is.
It's going down. So that's kind of really where we're at this point in setting. And well, I mean, people will say 40K is satire, or like there's some tongue-in-cheek jokes in there. A lot of these things are dark humor. Where did satire and dark humor come from? We think of these things as quintessentially British. Like, they became part of the British culture as a contrast of the whole like stiff upper lip. Like,
yeah, right.
Like hold your nose and do your duty for the king and country, all this shit. Like, the disillusionment of that idea really came during that war. And so the start of that British culture of, it's, we know it today, like, you watch television or British TV shows, it's always like, dry, dark humor.
Whenever there's a hero, they have to sneer at it. Whenever there's a noble, you have to be like, oh, he must be a fool, and all this kind of stuff. I think
it's still do some good stuff. It's not total cynicism all the time. I mean, the modern shit, of course, is, but this really emerged from taking a people with so much pride and so much dignity, and being in a situation of hegemony, and then being told, hey, you're the best, and then being sent into this fucking giant meat grinder for like a long time.
Right. And at the end of it, guess what? Yeah. You got to do it all over again. Right. Like years later, and lose the empire.
You gain pretty much nothing. All you can do is do some punitive shit towards the people you fought.
Right.
But there's no takeaway. There's not really a gain.
One of the interesting books that's really changed my whole thought on this, it was a guy named John Moisier. It's called The Myth of the Great War. And what he argues is that Germany basically won the war. Militarily, it was superior. It was getting like half to 3/4 of the casualties. Army was way better. The French and British were like total fools in the way they were conducting it. And basically what happened is America is the only thing that saved the day for the Allies. Like, it was over. Germany had basically achieved its objectives.
Of a fresh industrial power with
right.
production capability.
And also that the Americans fought better. Like, the Americans did not, like, here was the quote, they didn't want, the French and the British didn't want the Americans to have their own command.
No.
Because they were like, oh, you should just be subbed in with our guys to fill the losses.
We know what we're doing at
right.
this point.
You're stupid colonials.
We'll throw you
right.
in to basically fill in gaps in the ranks after we run our guys into shit all the time.
The Great War was won on the ground by American soldiers deployed as an American force and operating largely against the wishes and suggestions of the senior British and French commanders, who thought American troops should be distributed into Allied units as replacement for Allied losses to minimize their importance. Yeah, not, these colors don't run. Like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But Germany had basically won. The German army in World War I was peak.
I have, some objections to that a bit, but at the same
before
time,
the American entry, America doesn't enter the war; they win. I mean,
no.
You think Allies still would have won World War
I? Not necessarily. But I don't think it was the American fighting capability. It was just having a country that could ship millions of people.
That's what I mean, entering the war.
And supply and manufacture everything.
Right.
That made it in there. I mean, you look at the late war period, which is on page 5 of the notes, which you might get to. But, you have like the Kaiserschlacht. In 1918, where there's hey, this is a spring offensive. Like, really, we have to race to get this shit in now before the Americans could show up in force, because they just didn't want the new bodies. They didn't want all the new fucking manufacturing capabilities. Like, they didn't want to fuck with it. So you have these big offensives planned specifically to gain ground and to knock people out, and they came really close. Even like at the beginning of the war, they were 20 miles from Paris.
Yeah.
In like the first 2 months.
That's why the stab in the back theory makes sense, because they were still on French soil at the end.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this. The German lines were not in Germany at all.
Right.
At the end of the war, when the armistice was signed, like, they were occupying everything.
Right.
There was one moment in the beginning of the Battle of Frontiers where I think it was something led by Joseph Joffre came in and did actually get on German soil for a minute.
It was like Alsace-Lorraine, right?
Yeah, but they immediately had to get the fuck back.
Right.
Because Ruprecht was like,
Yeah, and he wasn't supposed to do that.
He wasn't supposed to. He was too good.
Well, this is the thing. Let's get into what actually happened and how it pretty eerily parallels what happened with the heresy.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot.
It's kind of 1-to-1, and you're like, because at some point somebody sat down and was like, okay, this is how the war is going to go. Like, we got to have key battles.
And this is the thing, the story of the heresy was planned. It was, look, there's going to be these phases, there's going to be these major engagements. We'll come up with the names for whatever, but these things kind of have to happen at these places within this timeline for it to work. So they had a window, and they had to fill everything in that window.
Well, here's how it went down, because what you have, did you want to do that quote? I can read that quote about the Germans going through Brussels.
Oh, yes. So this is, if this came from...
This is the muster of the traitor legions. This is really what this reminds
from Richard
you of.
Harding Davis. He was an American journalist. He had some decent stuff. But he was in Belgium at the time. And so he's writing it on the first time of seeing mobilization. And so there was a bit of combat, in and around the area, but he was just kind of hanging out, like getting drunk in the afternoon, being a journalist in Brussels.
Yeah, they just journalism never changes.
Truly. But so he writes on what he sees when this German column starts advancing through after they've secured. Look, we're going to just come through here. We're not going to fuck all your shit up. If you fuck with us, if one dude fires a gun at us, like, you guys are going to have a really bad time. But if we're all cool, we can be cool.
Right.
So he writes, Major General von Jarotsky, the German military governor of Brussels, had assured Burgermeister Max, the person in charge of this town.
Time when you could just hang out with
the Burgermeister. He assured the Burgermeister Max that the German army would not occupy the city, but would pass through it. He told the truth. For 3 days and 3 nights, it passed. For 2 hours, I watched them, and then, bored with the monotony of it, returned to the hotel. After an hour from beneath my window, I could still hear them, and another hour went by, and another. They were still passing. Boredom gave way to wonder. The thing fascinated you, against your will, dragged you back to the sidewalk, and held you there open-eyed. No longer was it a regiment of men marching, but something uncanny, inhuman, a force of nature like a landslide, or a tidal wave, or lava sweeping down a mountain. It was not of this earth, but mysterious and ghost-like. It carried all the mystery and menace of fog rolling towards you across the sea. All through the night, the tumult of a river when it races through the cliffs of a canyon, and in my sleep I could hear the steady roar of the passing army. And when early in the morning I went to the window, the chain of steel was still unbroken. It was a machine, endless, tireless, with the delicate organization of a watch and the brute power of a steamroller. And for 3 days and 3 nights through Brussels, it roared and rumbled like a cataract of molten lead. The infantry marched singing, with their iron-shod boots beating out the time. They sang "Fatherland, My Fatherland," and between each line of song they took 3 steps. At times, 2,000 men were singing together in absolute rhythm and beat. It was like blows from a giant pile driver. When the melody gave way, the silence was broken only by the stamp of iron-shod boots. Then again the song rose. When the singing ceased, the bands played marches. They were followed by the rumble of howitzers, the creaking wheels and chains clacking against the cobblestones, and the sharp bell-like voices of the bugles. When at night, for an instant, the machine halted, the silence awoke you. For 3 days and 3 nights, the column of gray, with hundreds of thousands of bayonets and hundreds of thousands of lances, with gray transport wagons, gray ammunition carts, gray ambulances, gray cannon, like a river of steel, cut Brussels in two. It is perhaps the most efficient organization of modern times, and its purpose only is death.
Insofar as I had family,
journalists used to be able to write.
I know. Remember, like, sports journalism from that day? Like, you read some article about, like, a baseball game from the 20s or something. It sounds like fucking Revelation. And it's a fucking baseball game.
Fucking Art of Jericho.
Yeah. What was the one about, like, somebody's offensive line? Like, in previous ages, they were known as, like, famine, war, and death. But then it's, like, 4 Slovakian guys who were on, like, an offensive line somewhere. It's just total decline. And these guys who were writing this were getting paid like no money, like drank all day, like they were just complete fuck ups, but they could write. It was just better. It was just a better look. This is key to the heresy and my entire political philosophy. We are in an age of decline. Do not ask when we are getting the collapse. The collapse happened. The collapse happened before you were born. You are in the ruins. You are living. You are cockroaches. grubbing among a civilization built by
beneath
better
the cabinets of society.
We are just nothing compared to what we were. But insofar as I had family involved in any of that, they were all in Germany at the time. My people didn't get here until after World War I, and people were really mad when we showed up. They didn't like Germans very much. And they were right. I mean, they should have shot us before we came on.
Right.
You can't let immigrants in for any reason.
No, not at all.
But this is
you know, you want to see like something about mechanized death of like a scale of warfare at the level that looks like 40K.
The whole time you're thinking Krieg. I mean, like,
which is the one thing that's not in my notes because everyone knows Krieg is a World War I army and there's no need to touch it.
And that it's the only thing we have to say about it is that it's a composite army. Right. It's not the Germans.
No,
it's basically everything.
It's French.
It's mostly French.
It's predominantly French.
Yeah, it's mostly French. I mean, you look at them and you see it. And it's like the helmets and everything.
And anyone with any level of historical... Fuck, I forgot the hat. I was going to get my commandant, my Perturabo SS Commander Autism cap to put on as I was reading from the prep. I forgot.
Too autistic to do your autistic bit.
I really was.
Undermined by your own autism. That's why Perturabo lost the siege. He was undermined by his own autism.
There's plenty of him.
Well, this is the key, though, because everybody thinks about like World War I, and they're like, oh, well, you know, the generals were just like stupid and they just like marched through things. They didn't know what machine guns were. So, like, first of all,
I mean, a lot of them were stupid because a lot of them were legacy hires and people that were in just off nobility because a lot of them were in basically a peacetime army or wartime armies of little consequence.
Well,
as soon as you rub shoulders with like very mechanized, very real consequence and a real level of warfare at this point, a lot of those guys got relieved pretty quickly.
One of the arguments, and again, you can accept it or not accept it, but one of the arguments in Myth of the Great War is that the Germans never went in for this. Like they literally, even early on, that you didn't have the like let's all march like we're in parade like into the machine guns. That they literally never did that. In fact, but he does say, and this is hardly relevant because 40K is British, close investigation reveals a more profoundly disturbing reality. This sort of slaughter of the infantry is almost exclusively a British achievement. So the idea of the generals far away in the back just being like, yeah, go in, that this actually was true. And the thing that you got to remember about the British Army, it was always very small. And when you think about the British Empire, it was a naval empire. The senior service is the Navy. So like there was no equivalent.
They had committed a fair amount of ground.
I mean, you got like, I mean, I'm not saying like in this war, clearly. I mean, it dwarfs anything Britain could do today. But if you think of...
Oh, but yeah, broadly speaking.
Well, you think of it like in the 19th century.
Right. Yeah, not around.
They're not...
Power. I mean, they could
Crimea, right? Yeah. I mean, but you didn't have the kind of mass warfare tradition that you had with the German states, that you had with France. It's just not the British way. It's not how they do things. Britain stays offshore. It balances. It does coalitions. It kind of funds both sides against each other.
Some mercantilism.
Right.
Some wheelings
there are some parallels between the way Britain operates and the way some other people operate. They tend to operate together. I'm getting sidetracked. Yeah. But the point is...
some Saxon merchants.
But the point is that they were, in some sense, unprepared for this sort of thing. But the Germans, this is all they did. For decades and decades and decades, they were like, "This is the war."
So it was planned. It was called like Der Tag, the day in German. It was like this was something that was planned for like well over a decade before war broke out.
Yep.
The idea that hey, this will be necessary because they knew they were landlocked largely.
And that Britain wanted to destroy them.
They're surrounded on all sides, and everyone was really pissed that Germany unified. And now you have this, new industrial and early imperial power that's trying to get some shit done. Everyone else is really mad about that.
Yeah.
So they knew something was going to have to happen, and they were preparing for this nice segue into something called the Schlieffen Plan. I want to talk about autism. Now, this isn't quite Perturabo. I mean, it's at his level, and I think like...
our spiritual ancestors were on like the Prussian high command, just like making these battlegrounds, moving little men around, getting ready for the future war.
I know. And this wasn't quite him. I would say it was more like not Ferdinand Foch, but Erich von Falkenhayn, the German commander. That was your Perturabo.
That's your Perturabo.
But this guy was definitely a fucking bean counter, where they had mobilization timetables down to like how many men could get on how many trains, could run on how many tracks, And in the
You're
food,
telling me these guys didn't play war games all day?
oh, bro,
Like, I mean,
all the fucking time. Like that's the biggest.
Also like Bertarabo,
the
the Iron Warriors.
Yeah,
when they're doing the war games before the Siege of Terra.
The biggest parallel between 40K and World War One is the amount of time these people spent playing war games, pushing tiny men around on maps,
and getting like really invested in
really
the outcome.
into it.
Whole
Because for them,
careers
it
made
was-
and broken depending on the outcome of these things.
Because for them, it was going to be like real dudes.
Yep,
You know?
yep.
So this shit was playing out for well over a decade
Just
before
like it will be for us.
right before the war broke out. In the whole theory from the beginning was they knew it was going to be a two-front war, and Russia historically had been very slow to action. So they counted on Russia taking, was it like or about 60 days, I think.
Well, they hadn't exactly covered themselves in glory in the Russo-Japanese War.
Right? Yeah, yeah. They did not show good colors on that one.
Shame for display.
honorary Nippon allies. But the whole theory was, hey, it's going to take them a long time to mobilize. And so what we have is basically ignore the entire Eastern Front, hammer the shit out of France, and then pivot back over there to deal with it later. Once the rest of our stuff is ironed out. And to do it, the plan was to take, kind of these. They'll talk about Western and Eastern on the same line, which does seem very confusing because it's all on this one side, but really the line's kind of diagonal. And so instead of saying north south for whatever reason, they will always talk about it east west, which really infuriates me as I go back through. It's clearly that's the worst way to describe this. But they're going to be in the southern area and more on the eastern part. I had to convert because I was like, man, this is. You got to rotate the globe.
Right.
I had to rotate the apple in my mind. Boy, did that
Shapeoid over here. I'll take you to the shape store later, and you can remember how these things work. But continue with the Schlieffen plan.
So the plan was, hey, we're gonna bait them, and we're gonna hold them in this area, and have some pretty serious engagements down there, but not push too far.
Yeah, and the key was to let them
to trap them and get them to push because at this time, like, you didn't have a lot of aerial reconnaissance. This was not used.
That wasn't really developed.
You didn't have you didn't have messages moving very quickly. Like you had to get to the front and run your goddamn telegraph wire towards your command post and have that daisy chained all the way back. And so you're having to set up somewhere to deliver this from. And if you're past that point, someone's got to go on a fucking horse and get the message back to where that last post is. So it takes some time.
And the name of that young German messenger? Adolf Hitler.
That's true. Many such cases. He won medals for that. He really did.
Say what you will about no.
So the whole thing was to hold them up there and then send the bulk of their force, like the vast majority of it, up north, through Belgium, smash through that shit, and get all the way up to the ocean so they can't be flanked, right? Because that's the big thing. It's if you're gonna have this huge line, you can't let somebody get your flank and turn the flank. So go all the way up to the ocean and start encircling back down and hook around the French and try to like recreate the Battle of Cannae at like a massive scale. And so cool, we'll encircle them. We'll make a big pocket. They'll fucking
Seems to be what every general wants to do is the old double envelopment.
right.
I mean,
That's always
that's the
move,
dream.
right? Which, funnily enough, counts for absolutely nothing when you're playing the fucking tabletop game.
I know, right?
Which maddens me to no end. Unless you're playing Warhammer Fantasy, which now they call the old world, then it mattered. Then it was nice. But in this, do what you will.
Decline.
So that was the whole plan, and it was this overcommitment to it. So von Schlieffen dies, and in true autistic form, as he's dying on his deathbed, his like dying words are like, "Keep the right flank strong."
God, I know. I read it. When I read that, I was like, that is what it is to be a thoroughbred.
Truly.
Like, you've got your crazy fucking autistic, you've got your family crying,
everything else
all
in his
these
life,
people.
all he's doing is telling
you
the next
probably got
commander.
some faggot priest being like, oh, what about your soul? Like,
no,
none of this matters.
My plans.
Bullshit. This is all bullshit. You keep the right wing strong. That's what matters. Like, what a fucking hero. They were just better men.
He really was. And so he had a contemporary. So this guy was a Schlieffen.
General Schlieffen.
And they call it the Schlieffen plan. But his contemporary was Helmut von Moltke, and who also was old. But so this got taken over.
Wasn't it the...
it was Moltke the
son,
Younger.
right? Moltke the Younger, yeah.
His son. His fucking sodomite nephew or whatever. Like this, I mean, he wasn't actually sodomite, but he was a fucking like very scatterbrained, ill-tempered, He went through like the first little bit. I think he
and had a nervous breakdown, didn't he?
Yeah, he made it barely through the Battle of the Frontiers, and as soon as it slowed down after the first battle,
just lost his shit.
He just like was pulling his hair out, like he was that kind of autist. You know, he couldn't like rub his earlobes.
I'm a surgeon.
And flick the fidget spinner fast enough to self-soothe. He couldn't self-soothe.
See, he could have benefited from a trip to the shape store. It would have been better off
definitely.
for him.
You know, nice like some stimming toys, kind of keep his hands busy, let him calm down, play a little vidya. But no, he was not the locked in sort of autist.
No.
He was the very frazzled.
Not the kind you need.
Yeah, very excitable in the worst way side. So, you know, he kind of takes over and then, you know, of course, switches the plan. He's like, well, we can't overcommit that hard to the right. I don't like it. And so then you have this big bog down, whatever. But there was a really big plan at the beginning. This was planned for a very long time. And then if we look at the heresy, nice parallel here, there was definitely a plan going on there.
It's really remarkable when you actually
and
look
the
at it.
plan was, what was it? To have a quick, decisive breakthrough, an encirclement of enemies that you didn't want to face one-on-one or
You
an open
ignore the
combat.
guys who can't mobilize quickly.
Right.
You deal with them later.
Yep. You partition everything off, and then you make a breakthrough, and you go all the way through.
This is where Ultramar is.
Right.
Kevin's grand gesture.
This area of the Ultramarines tend to stay in this area over here.
If you look at the galactic map here,
Right. You know, so it's
like a pile of
very
trash
one for one,
and
because they were
energy
all
drinks over there.
looking at it and thinking, hey, you know, we really don't want a protracted engagement. It's going to be costly. It's going to be a fucking disaster. We just need to bust through this shit, get to the objective. For the Germans, it was Paris. For Horus, it was Big E, and fucking handle this shit real quick, and then we'll be on it. Then we can deal with everyone else later, and we'll
Right.
be about our business.
I mean, this is one of the keys in the heresy because it's brought up over and over and over again. Because remember, during the siege, they're saying you got the phalanx and you had this kind of fleet, and there was sort of this half-ass plan, like, well, we could like rescue the emperor and fly away and go somewhere. But he says over and over and over again, like, no, like one, the emperor's not going to leave because they don't know what's going on with the throne and everything else.
Right.
But the other thing is that Horus needs the emperor. The point is not to get Terra.
Right.
He doesn't even need Terra.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit about Terra.
He needs the emperor. He needs the emperor dead.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way he can stake his claim to be the new master of mankind. The emperor must die. What are they literally chanting in the final days of the siege? The emperor must die. The emperor must die. Like fucking appearing on the walls in blood and shit.
Yeah.
I mean, for the Germans, I mean, it had to be Paris. And this is the thing. It's like, oh, well, you know, Napoleon took Moscow and it didn't do anything. France is not Russia. It's different. Paris is like the nerve center of the whole thing. Like there's no scenario where that falls and it's like, well, it's just fine. You know, like we're just going to keep going.
Also, the French are not the Russians.
Well, they're a different kind of people.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like the Russians are like a
semi-barbaric people.
semi-intelligent.
But that's what makes them so hard to defeat.
No, they're like a race of man that like is befit and comfortable with life of tragedy.
Right.
You know,
right.
you look at all of their authors, all of their writers, it's like,
oh yeah, because
this
the
is
French
not
are
great.
well known for their sense of optimism. I mean, let's not go too far here.
yeah, well, at least they like have bits of life that they allow themselves to enjoy. So it's like shaking the snow off a half-inch bottle of vodka off the
French,
back porch.
the French are not disgusted by beauty.
They're not disgusted by beauty. They have food.
They have food.
Contrast with Russia, who does not. You know, it's pretty clear. There's a big.
Oh shit. No, but if you look at Horus and then compare that to the Germans, because obviously, you know, it's an Anglo framing, and so just subconsciously it's there, even though it's not intended, and you'd have to dig for it and everything else.
And
subconsciously,
we are going to be basically following this, at least World War I side, predominantly from the German perspective. And that is not really because, you know, for whatever reason, or they should have won, they should have lost. Like some things would have gone, you know, worse or never materialized had they had lost. It's largely because it is the one cohesive point of view for the story that tells it the best.
and also that's true for Horus.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you look at the Loyalists, first of all, the Loyalists don't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
Second of all, there is no real united Loyalist thing. I mean, poor Gilliman doesn't figure out what the hell's happening until it's almost too late.
Or you look at the other German legions and their roles and everything, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like what do you hate, Night Lords? Guess what? In this metaphor, you're fucking Turks.
Yeah, and the Khan, of course.
Sorry, Night Lords players, but like really, that's
the Turks are a cruel race. That are. You saw what they did to Lawrence of Arabia. But if you think about what they tried to do, I mean, there's a deliberate plan, and it's very straightforward. Like, step one, you purge the guys who you can't trust within your own legions. That's Isfahan 3.
Yep.
Then you're going to have the drop site massacre, Isfahan 5, where you take out 3 legions, basically.
Yep.
And also the Primarch's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Then
get rid of them, reveal kind of your last sort of hidden trap cards in the encirclement. But like in between 3 and 5, you really got to lure, or really before Isfahan 3, you got to be luring these guys off. Like, get Gilliman the fuck out of here. You got to get Sanguinius out of here. The Dark Angels where they got pushed away to?
Well, the Dark Angels were part of the crusade that the Night Lords.
Well, I know they were in like the
because they made it to Ultramar,
right?
Eventually.
Okay, is that it? I could
because what in the Thalmor Crusade, I think of what it was, but the Thalmor Crusade, not Thalmor Crusade. I'm butchering the name of it. The Thalmor Crusade. I'll look it up real quick. I'm butchering the name of it. But the Shadow Crusade.
It is like the Thalmor.
Yeah, it's like
a different one.
Right. I'm butchering the name. But what happened was the Night Lords more or less created a giant distraction to keep everybody worked up over there. But the deliberate plan, the big one that was supposed to keep him there, was the Ruin Storm and the joint efforts of Angron and Lorgar. So if we take this metaphor, the Eastern Front, like the Russians in this metaphor, it's not perfect because really Gilliman is closer to like America if we want to string it out. But like take this as like the grand strategic picture. If the war is fundamentally, I know there's all these other guys running around, Germany versus Britain and France. Let's call that the core struggle.
Right.
Let's call Paris Terra. That's the main objective. You get that, you win, for all intents and purposes. At the beginning of the war, Ultramar is sort of like Russia, in that it's this big thing, and if they can get going, they're going to roll in and ruin all your plans.
If you can keep them.
But if you can just kind of, again, return to the map. And what happened was Angron,
if we were pushing around little figures.
That's what's happening up here. Yes.
I know. I can see it.
Lorgar, you can see the wheels turning.
I can see it. It's a beautiful.
Lorgar and Angron were sent there to create the Ruin Storm, with warp fuckery to keep them away, to make it impossible for them to travel. Well, but Lorgar, also to fuck everything up.
Right. Lorgar on the back end is also like really trying to get Angron to turn.
And Lorgar is also the one who's been planning this for the longest time, and then you have the atrocity at Calth, which you Word Bearers fans out there will argue was an act of self-defense, where what they did with Calth is they came within a hair of basically destroying the Ultramarines. I mean, one of the reasons No Fear, also Dan Abnett, praise be upon him, is such a great book, is because it's the closest thing you get to a battle where you're in the mindset of the people fighting it. Where at the beginning you're like, what the hell is going on? And then it's, okay, we are really in trouble. We're all about to die. Right. And then you kind of slowly claw your way back. And you don't win, but you don't lose.
Yeah.
And so, or at least you do lose, but you get to fight another day. And so you can win in the end, And so,
well, he's great with that.
Yeah,
he's really good.
It was so perfect.
Putting you in perspective.
It was so perfect. What's so cool, my
everything.
favorite part, just as an aside, my favorite part of No Fear is you've got these guys and they're like calculating how long it's going to be before they all die, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we got about 40 minutes before we wiped out. But then, like, some new guys show up. We're like, okay, now we have 43 minutes. And then some more guys show up.
Right.
Now we got, like, 2 hours. And then some more guys show up. It's just slowly, like, you're still going to lose, but it's the slow creeping of hope. Yeah. And, like, that's a cool way to look at it. And the point is, for both the Germans and for the traitors, speed was the necessity.
Yeah.
They had to win quickly. Because a lot of times, you forget about the Horus Heresy.
And then decisive, fast action.
This is what's crazy.
Quick.
The whole Horus Heresy.
It's supposed to be
galaxy-spanning civil war. It's like, what, 7 years?
Isfahan 5, and then we just kind of like scoot that way.
Yeah. He even says, the War Master even says at one point, the road to Terra is open. I think that's what he says after Isfahan 5, does he not?
Right.
And if that great quote, which I think actually Dan Carlin used in Hardcore History when he was doing his bit on it, if you imagine like what the equivalent of that is, that was the big muster. Remember they had like a traitor muster on Ulanor.
Right.
Where they had they marched up and they all realized they got everybody together, like this is what we're gonna do. That was when Lorgar basically got excommunicated from the war effort because he tried to overthrow the War Master and everything else. But then they said, okay, now we're going. It was quick. The whole heresy, I think, was only 7 years? give or take.
Yeah.
And the siege was not all that long either. I mean, it felt pretty bad for the defenders, but it wasn't like
felt 170
Put it
years
this way. Put it this
felt
way.
170 years
The Horus heresy. Yeah, right. The Horus heresy, galaxy-spanning civil war, including the siege, less time than the Trojan War.
Yeah, fucking Horus.
Decade on this fucking beach. Great dialogue in the new movie, assholes. And no, I'm not going to see it, so don't worry.
So we got the plan, and we look at the initial action, right?
Bullshit. What? No, sorry.
We look at the initial
Raging
action.
out about blacks in my Greek mythology.
At least they don't have.
I'll be good. Go ahead.
The Reebok, or the Air Jordan pump from the tongue of your shoe inserted into a flap made from your forearm skin, so you can squeeze your balls nervously to give yourself a fucking hot air balloon powder before you get killed on the beach.
Incredible.
Thank you, Ellen Page. I'm sorry that happened to you as a kid.
As an aside, moving on.
Pressing forward.
But everything with the German strategy and Horus's strategy is basically the same.
Yeah.
It's speed, it's decisiveness, it's shock.
It's pull shit away from the main objective, outmaneuver your enemy into a better position, and then you strike.
And because
they
Horus
were successful in a number of different ways, they just got fucking bogged down. And they got bogged down from a lot of things of you have these, one, chaos will fuck you up. And then if you're the kind of person that's going to be a bit treacherous, you're going to be a bit treacherous and kind of non-committed to things in the get. So there's a nice message in that. And things get distracted and you have conflicted war aims, which is, as we'll get to, Germany getting saddled with some really fantastic allies in the war, like the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria.
Bulgaria was awesome. I will defend Bulgaria.
Was the best of all that they had.
Bulgaria. No. If you ever, just as an aside, and I hope I don't get him in trouble by mentioning it, but if you ever watch that guy, Alt History Cody, if you ever watch any of his stuff, he has a really interesting video on what would have happened if America had stayed out of World War I. So how the Central Powers could have won. And his whole focus is what they do is the Germans throw in a lot more support to Bulgaria. And they use that to win down in Greece. And so the first domino, not the first domino to fall, that would be Russia, of course, but the domino that really starts the whole thing going is they take Greece. Because in Greece, there was a movement to overthrow the leadership and put a pro-German monarch.
But they were already allied with Greece.
No, the Germans.
Yeah, I know, the Turks.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Keep saying Greece as if that's not Turkey.
Yeah, now we're definitely going to get a shit ton of hate mail now. Except from Hassan Piker.
Hey guys, can you show us the difference between these two cans?
I disavow entirely, but I'm Italian, so I'm especially sensitive on these kinds of things. I'm more or less equivalent.
It's a rough one. Yeah, but
Bulgaria,
even by taking Serbia out, they got a section of land connectivity from the Ottomans to be able to move up in and actually materially
before
support,
people just
which
don't know
didn't
what
happen. And all that was, it made it easier for Germans to send more of their Germans to support the Ottomans, fucking thumbing each other's ass with their dumb janissaries, and we're gonna put mines in the Dardanelles, but you have to show us where to put them.
He doesn't like Turks, but he also doesn't like Greeks, apparently. No. But Bulgaria, say this about Bulgaria.
I feel bad for the Greeks.
I'll say this about Bulgaria. They had a population of 4.5 million people. They put 1.2 million people into the field. That's 25% of your whole population.
Which means that's about half of all your men.
That's insane. And this is the thing to understand too.
Counting babies and old.
But this is critical. I know we're talking about it and we're going in a million different directions, talking about all these detailed things, but to take a big step back to understand how different these people were, how different the leadership was. This sort of effort, the whole nation being dedicated just to war, total mobilization. We can't even begin to understand what that was like.
Towards the end of the war, churches were offering up their church bells, and icons to be melted down to get the brass out to make more shell casings.
And the preachers and the pastors were like, "This is good."
And they would have funerals for the bell before they would ship it off. And it's something that had been there for 800 years.
Think of all the shit, the Cultural Revolution. That was unleashed in this country, because I'm complaining about hippies, so this is important.
Right.
The Cultural Revolution that was unleashed in this country because of the Vietnam War. And the total number of casualties was a day. Yeah. That was the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah.
And that was over 10 years. Like, that's what we're talking about.
As opposed to like day one.
Like, Vietnam came within a whisker of like breaking America. And that, to you, the Vietnam War was the most devastating thing in your history. But to me, it was Tuesday. Right. Like, that is what we're talking about. Like, and the thing is, like, these societies.
These are levels of like mechanized warfare that would make Napoleon blush.
Oh God! I mean, the Napoleonic Wars were nothing. Were nothing compared to this.
Right. I mean, like the step from the prior era to the Napoleonic Wars, and even then, everyone was still shocked at the level of mobilization, the level of industry.
That's what made the French so scary.
Right, because they were willing to arm their fucking peasants.
Yeah, I mean,
but everyone else is like, "Fuck, we have to arm our peasants."
So if you imagine the German strategy in this, and now with 40K, with the Great Crusade, with let's say the Great Crusade, because that's what they're coming off of. You're dealing with not total mobilization, clearly.
Right.
But what you are dealing with, so the parallel is not perfect.
You could say it's like the tail end of the Franco-Prussian War. Which works out.
But I mean, if you think of the Imperium during the Great Crusade, if anything, toward the end of the Great Crusade, I mean, was becoming more civilian. I mean, that was one of the grievances that Horus had in the Traitor Legions, was that, no, you're having like civilians tell us what to do.
Right, yeah.
We've got like these people who... Right. Why should people who didn't win the empire get the government?
The English complaint of like, our men are out here, but it's a bunch of lions led by donkeys.
Right.
Like competent leadership and like civilians.
But it's even worse because at least those donkeys were like generals and military guys.
Right.
I mean, Horus was being like, why is like the Council of Terra telling my legionaries what to do?
Right. Why is some dude telling me what I can't do? Like,
right. Who is this remembrancer telling me if I feel sad? Why don't we just kill him and I get
eat
to
grenades or whatever?
Yeah. Right. Like if I eat his brain, I know his thoughts. Yeah. If I eat his brain, I know his thoughts. Why is he telling me what to do? Why shouldn't I eat his brain and then I know what to do? That makes more sense.
I don't need it
Holy
anymore.
Shit, Horus is right. I think that just like sold the whole reason.
He was. Yeah. Really could have used a lot more cannibalism. Could have really solved this problem.
I know cannibalism solves most problems, but
so are we back to Russia in 1917?
I think we're up to Russia like today, as far as I can tell. I've been there twice, and it was close to.
We're in the early stage of the war. Or at least in the heresy side. If you look at Isfahan 3 and the virus bombing there, there's a nice little parallel I found when I was doing some show prep. Now, this happened much later in the war for Germany, but they were kind of working to destabilize the whole Russian situation for some time. They could see which way the wind was blowing. But it's also important to remember, so like, everyone was related at this point.
Kaiser Wilhelm did not want to go to war with Britain. He came he came really close to canceling the whole thing.
Because these people were all fucking related. Yeah. They were all Catherine the Great's fucking nieces and nephews.
Right. And also Kaiser Wilhelm II was not as stupid as people think he was.
Like God, what's her name?
Who, Queen Victoria?
No, the of the Romanovs. It was Tsar Nicholas's wife.
Oh, Alexandra? Was that it?
I think so.
Yeah.
But
Alexandra.
Her cousin was the Kaiser.
Right.
There was like
she was a German princess, wasn't she? Yeah.
There's correspondence back and forth from all this, and like
Cousin Nicky. That was what he called him, right?
Yep, that was
Cousin Nicky. Yeah.
So there's all this shit going on there where it's like these people all know each other and they're all fucking related and they're all like the leaders of these powers that ultimately go to war with each other. It's like, wow,
they didn't want to destroy.
That's a nice little parallel with the heresy, isn't it? It's like, oh, you guys are all.
That's a really good point.
You're all related. You all have back channels
that
between
picture.
One another.
That picture I talked about where all the crown heads of Europe are there and they're all at the camera and they're all friends. They're having a party together. That's the triumph of Eleanor right there. I know. That's what's happening.
Except in this situation, the emperor is Catherine the Great.
Or Victoria, I guess.
Or like Catherine the Great big pussy, am I right? Hey. See a lot of fucking kids squeeze out of that thing. Squoze, we're squizzing.
It would be Victoria, though, wouldn't it? Victoria
would
be the emperor.
Yeah, from her demonculabia.
What's so funny about Kaiser Wilhelm is that there's all these pictures of him.
The Russian thing.
Yeah.
We'll stay on this for a second.
Excellent. That's how you handle it.
So, and that's kind of what the Germans try to do. So they're kind of destabilize Russia a bit. And so in a similar way that, we got Isfahan 3, we're going to drop some virus, we're going to drop the Life Eater virus on you guys. It's going to fucking devour you. You're going to melt, all this whole other thing. And that's going to take care of this problem. It's going to get all of you guys out of the war.
The traitors.
Yeah,
the traitors of the traitors.
Yeah, the loyalists.
The loyalists within the traitors.
We've got a problem. We've got to deal with it. We'll use a virus to do it. So what did the Germans do in what was it, 17? Early, I think it was mid 17. Mm-hmm. So people might not know this, but this is like part of the history of the war that really should be in your history books and that you don't get told. Is that like Lenin was basically an ideological bioweapon that was shipped to Russia from Germany. They put him and like 30 other he was like exiled. He was in Sweden or some shit, and they arranged for him to come to Germany, and they arranged with Sweden or Switzerland or something to have this back channel, like, hey, we're gonna let some passengers come through. And so they had a sealed train car that was like locked. So like no Germans could come in contact with like the contagion of fucking Bolshevism. They were like, lock them in the fucking train car. It'll be nice. They'll have their stuff, but like no one can even talk to them.
Right.
Like these guys.
And it still didn't work.
Like goddamn lepers.
Paid for that in 45.
Right. And so put Lenin these Bolsheviks in there and then ship them off to Russia. And we're like, hey, surprise, here's some communists. Because at the time there was definitely socialist tendencies and everything, and a lot of like really poorly thought out goals, and it was definitely stirred by a bunch of certain agitators.
That we're calling
agitators. Within Russia that led to like the whole disgraceful end of the Romanov Empire. Like talk about something that really is disgusting.
Yeah.
You look
still
at that.
get mad.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I get like physically angry when I think about it. And it's not like a performative thing, but it's like, oh, you have these people and they weren't like, oh, royalty, whatever, hoity-toity, whatever. You think these people is like they suck. There's like we have records like from this time we have shit. We have like love letters that they wrote back and forth to one another when they were traveling out of town, like love letters to their children. This wasn't like an arranged marriage and like they were just sitting there like like eating a banana with a fork and knife, like some kind of English noble would.
Right.
There's some actual shit there, and then they put all
So is Nicholas II which would he be the equivalent of Ferris Manus then? As like the first to fall?
Yeah, I guess I would
so.
say.
And also, Ferris Manus was really loved by the loyalists.
Yeah,
like they all really mourned him.
And so
the irony, of course, is that
they shipped fucking Lenin these Bolsheviks over there. We keep getting on these asides, but that's what takes Russia out of the war. They had already had the October Revolution, right? That already happened.
Well, you had Kerensky first. I mean, this is the key. Kerensky.
Right. They weren't all the way.
You had the February Revolution,
right,
which was the overthrow of the Tsar, and you had Kerensky taking over. But Kerensky thought that he would keep Russia in the war.
Yeah.
So the Allies liked it because at this point the Allied propaganda is that this is a war for democracy.
Right. And that's when the Germans
were
like, oh no,
yeah, we're going to take it to the next
send the
level.
virus, but the ideological virus bomb of communism. Right. It's like, wow, what a good parallel for the life eater virus.
Yeah.
Here's something that like it comes in contact with everything and it rapidly degrades it down to its
That's what I'm going to call
parts.
communism from now on.
Yeah,
the life eater virus.
Communism is the fucking life eater virus, 100%.
Yeah.
And it ships these Bolsheviks and Lenin and all these communist Jews over there. Do I not do this on this show, Kevin?
I don't think Lenin was Jew. Well, I guess he was part Jewish, wasn't he?
I don't care. I can look into a picture of him and I can see his Yiddish soul. And it stares back to me. This fucking Hagen Avila starts playing in my ears. It's like the warp, Kevin. I can't do it.
I'm getting ready to like pull out genetics and be like, wow.
I can't do it.
It's all bullshit. It's fine.
Yeah, it's all Bolshevik bullshit. So that's how they knock Russia out of the war. Like they ship horrible Jewish communists into Russia, and they're like, "Hey, have these guys," and then like a matter of months. Now the Bolsheviks are in charge and they've agitated enough that everyone left the fucking war. And this was
because they promised peace. Because they promised to take Russia out of the war.
Another big parallel with this, if we look at the idea of it being World War I, definitely being a horrible brothers' war, except for on the Eastern Front because it's Slavs and Europeans aren't quite the same thing. Sorry, guys.
You can be sad about the Tsar because he was German.
Yes, I can be sad about that because he actually had a soul. He had things like food and women, like the French did, as opposed to the Russians.
They get like drone strikes by the Red Army over
here.
Right.
But you have this idea of this brothers' war and everything, and then you look over at, man, that's really going somewhere. I had a good point.
What about what was going on with Prospero and places like that? I mean, because there are a lot of other battlefields here.
No, it was the idea of the truce. Right.
Oh, the Christmas truce. Yeah,
very famous in the Christmas truce of like
1915.
They stop fighting. Right? Yeah, they have this moment where like they kind of get together over the battle. We don't need to get into it. Everyone knows about it. If you don't know about it, you're a fucking idiot. It's like that's the one thing they talk about in school. They're like they don't tell you about the communist Jews they shipped into Russia to fuck everyone up. They don't tell you about that. They tell you about how everyone got out of the trenches and kicked the soccer ball, played footy, kicked the soccer ball around and like ate some chocolate and shook hands and jerked each other off in fucking no man's land, and everyone went back to the trenches. But like the officers were fucking pissed about this, especially the British. The British got mad.
Yeah.
Where this didn't happen was on the Eastern Front. They didn't take prisoners.
Well, they don't even have Christmas at the same time.
No, well, they don't have souls over there either. But they didn't take prisoners.
Savages.
The Germans did not take prisoners really that much on the Eastern Front. If they were kept isolated from the troops, and they could not be kept in contact.
Pretty similar
with
to
the
World
lines
War II.
because they knew that these people were that there were communist agitators and Bolsheviks within the ranks in the entire area of the Eastern Front. So at the same time that they're trying to push this stuff to help collapse the Roman Empire, they need to insulate their troops from contact.
Doesn't that tell you something?
Really is like
everybody knows leftism is a virus.
Everyone knows, and it was unleashed in a punitive
just a
way
weapon
to destroy
Yeah.
them, and then it worked. And it's like, well, I'm sorry you're fighting like the Death Guard on the Eastern Front. It's like, yes, we have to fight them and take them over, but like we can't get too close to them.
Have you ever heard the? And I only know this because of a Sabaton song, but the attack of the dead men, where this is earlier in the war, where you had these Russians, they launched poison gas at them, so they all basically die. And the Russians, of course, but they're Russian. So, like, as they're coughing up their lungs and dying, they keep, like, stumbling forward and present this, like, ghastly appearance, counterattacking the Germans while their lungs are, like, draped over their chest and stuff. So the Germans
made for a wonderful Sabaton.
Yeah, so the Germans, of course, being civilized, run away. But, I mean, this is probably the closest to, like, a Death Guard attack anyway.
Yeah, poxwalkers. Really, most of the Eastern Front was just dealing with poxwalkers at that point.
Yeah,
it's like, sorry, but like, yeah, man, you know, they didn't have food, they didn't have broads. You know, we already covered the whole issue over there. But so you know, Isfan 3, communism, life eater virus, nice little.
And the Ruin Storm. If we think about the 2-part plan, I mean, the Ruin Storm was basically the idea of cutting off the reinforcements from Russia, and then I got the name wrong. The Thramis Crusade. The Thramis Crusade.
Yes,
that was the Night Lords' attack to keep Ultramar distracted.
Because if they said it was Thalmor, they would have retroactively sued.
Thalmor.
They would have
I hope you guys never let
retroactively
me forget that one.
Retroactively, they would have sued Bethesda, saying that they came up with it. Rick Priestley wrote that back in 1980.
Skyrim belongs to the Nords.
And you guys actually stole that from us, and now you owe us $1 billion.
No, Thramis Crusade was when the Night Lords were trying to keep Ultramar distracted and out of it and everything else. But I would say, I mean, again, the parallels aren't perfect, but it is striking how Horus's strategy and the German strategy were basically one and the same.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that's interesting is the sorts of... There's a famous short story where Horus is talking to the skull of Ferrus Manus. You know, he's starting to lose it a bit. And he's talking to himself much the way I do when I'm here in the hate shed at like 2 in the morning.
Except you talk to your shoulder.
Yeah, I talk to my shoulder.
The left one?
Yeah, it's the left one generally. I don't even know anymore. I can't tell left from right. But
Kevin.
God, I should have done all these things.
I should have died years ago.
But he's complaining that he basically has command of an army of broken monsters. That's the term he uses.
Yeah.
Because all the ones that he wishes, he even says this explicitly, how strange it is that the people who I wish were at my side are not. Yep. Whereas the ones who are all crazy and everything else are on my side. And you would think that, well, maybe you should reflect on that a little bit.
Is there a message in that somewhere?
Right. Maybe like when allying with the gods of hell like wasn't the best idea. But like, of course he doesn't.
You want to know the most stable of friends.
Right. Who could have imagined that having like demons like puppet all your friends would like lead to disaster? But what he says is that he's got all these people who are unstable, and it's not even a war that can be directed anymore. This is like the key phrase. At the beginning of World War I, the Germans had a deliberate plan. It was rational. I mean, in a way, this is why Western culture destroyed itself, because you had a plan, and yes, it was dedicated to death and everything else, but it was rational. It was made by educated, cultured men. And they were like, we're going to do this thing. It's for a specific objective. And then 2 years down the line, it's just fucking madness. Right, and we're launching gas and doing God knows what. And everybody's doing all sorts of crazy shit. Yeah, I mean, and Horus, the first year, let me just finish this point, though. As Horus says, this war is no longer something that can be directed. It's a storm.
Yeah.
It's just it's a natural phenomenon. And all you can do is endure it. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty one for one. If we look at the the beginning, the opening months, it's called the Battle of the Frontier of the First World War. That's where you see a lot of this shit. People figuring out what the fuck's going on. Because at the beginning, like, trenches came later. They were not there at the beginning. At the beginning, people were maneuvering and hitting an open field and trying to engage in maneuver warfare, similar to Napoleonic tactics.
Which is crazy when you consider that the American Civil War basically had trench warfare by the end.
Right. Yeah. At the end, once it was
1864, 1865,
you had that defensive period, and that's kind of where it was. But Europe really hadn't learned that lesson because America's just some scummy colonial.
Yeah,
and
right.
They won't learn from
they're right to think of us.
I mean, they still don't have fucking air conditioning, so like really, more of you fucking Euroids. Whatever, die from lack of air conditioning.
I like how the line where civilized society keeps getting pushed over. Like, the Russians don't count, now the Europeans don't count.
New Greece doesn't
Eventually,
count.
It's just going to be whole parts of America that don't count.
Eventually, it's going to be Lynchburg, Virginia, and like a few spots.
But only like certain neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, fuck no. Like, definitely.
Well, trust me, there are definitely some neighborhoods in Lynchburg, Virginia that decidedly do not count.
Like where I live, like on that side of history, don't go there.
I'll let the Turks in before them.
Yeah, this
anyway.
is the Hatreds in a nice part of town. I don't know why it's so hateful over here. It's actually a really great place to be.
We uphold bourgeois standards here.
Yeah. So you had this whole battle of the frontier, and at the beginning, most of this action was on the southern part of the line because they will not use the east-west dichotomy of the European historians. So instead of looking at it as a line that has a north and a south, and isn't that a much easier way to fucking do this?
Right.
And like slightly more east and slightly more west. That gets confusing because like if you're in Germany, it's all west, and if you're in France, it's all east.
Well, the key was that.
It's a north-south issue. This really agitates me to no fucking end. I will keep going.
Today's episode in map autism, but
big time. Where's that?
But the key here is that the original German plan. Go back to the Schlieffen plan real quick, but this is something you brought up with what happened at Isfahan 5. The original plan was, you keep the right strong, and you're going to flank it. You're going to do all this stuff, but then you're going to almost not let them win, but let them win. You're going to draw them in.
You want them to
you're
think
gonna,
they're doing good.
Like, what is the oldest play in the book? The feigned retreat, right?
Yeah. And so the entire, what they call the left flank, or what is the southern end of the line, it was a controlled feigned retreat.
And that was in Alsace, right?
Right. Alsace, Lorraine, a number of different places. That's in a page I already threw, but there's some locations written on that. You got a teleprompter. You figure it out. You read the shit I already wrote. So, you have a lot of this in the South, and that's where you get like the beloved actions of Crown Prince Ruprecht and everything down there. But so a lot of it was, hey, you're coming in. We're going to either slightly attack the French or bait them into an engagement, and we will begrudgingly give ground. You can't make it seem too, like, oh, we started this war and we're attacking you, but we're running away all the time. It's very obvious.
Yeah, right.
So they had these engagements like very well set up, and this is all very much part of the plan of we're going to bait these engagements. We're going to present tempting targets. Is that a secondary objection in 9th, the tempting target?
Yeah,
I think so.
We're
going to set up these tempting targets, and we're going to bait them into attacking it, and we're going to move back a little bit, and we're going to let them come forward and take ground and wait for their supplies to be able to move up and everything, so they're not totally overextended, because we want them to really commit to where they're making progress on the line and where they think they're reacting to an offensive. The issue with beloved Crown Prince Ruprecht,
I've got it.
Lord of the
I've got
the
it.
animals
So
of
what
the field
happened?
and the fish of the sea.
I've got this. So
he's going to read.
The Sixth Army had success, which I totally came up with this myself. He didn't do anything with this prep. I did all the work today. The Sixth Army had success in a false counterattack, overcommitting and forcing a local retreat from the French Second Army. He pursued, by he, of course, I mean Crown Prince Ruprecht, Crown Prince of Bavaria, Duke of Bavaria, Franconia, and Suabia Palatine by the Rhine. He pursued, chasing them back to the original French lines at the start of the war. This ruined a major aspect of the plan. As all other French armies pulled back so as not to expose a flank, the German left was now solidified into a defensive line, allowing the French to focus attention on pushing north to stop the German encirclement of the theater. So, what he should have done was keep going back.
Right.
But instead, it's like the...
he had a counterattack, and then the French started running, and, he pushed them back because, and a big part of this was, so the German field artillery, and the field artillery being what you take with you at the time, your mobile elements.
Right.
Dramatically outranged and outgunned the French field artillery. So they got in these positions where they could be getting hammered as they were setting up when they couldn't respond. Which, if you have good spotters and good maps, which means you can knock out the enemy's artillery batteries, well, they can't respond to you at all.
Yeah.
And at that point, they're going to boogie, which is mostly what happened. They kind of pre-zoned things, had some spotters out, and knocked out the French artillery and their rear line support. And then the front line of it were like, oh shit, we're unsupported. We have no artillery. We got to get back and figure out what the fuck we're going to do.
The other fictional thing.
And then he was like, "Oh, we should go in all the way on this."
Yeah, right.
Like, let's send my guys. And so when we talk about moving a flank and turning a flank, right? It's easy to look at it as the theater scale development. If you have this whole line, and if you're getting a break between either the southern end or the northern end of the line, you have this cool thing that happens, and now you can wrap around and make a pocket and fucking smash them. At the division, at the army level, when I believe was it the French second that they hit?
Yes.
So they hit the French second. So they're having to pull back, but they're a brick of the French second. They're spanning a section of the line. And then they have the third, and then the fifth to their north. And so when they come back, they expose the flanks of the third and the fifth on either side.
Right.
And so the third and fifth really have to step back with them so they don't make a bulge or a bubble or a salient.
Right.
As they call it at this time, which Verdun was really a battle of a salient, but just inverted.
Yeah.
And so they had to pull back because of Rupert Dukes. So instead of him just knocking back, the Second Army and making some ground there, it was the entire southern section of the French line started retreating backwards. And then everyone else started pushing the attack as well as you were gaining ground. I was like, okay, well, maybe if we can bait them into digging in here and take more strictly defensive action, that's going to tie things up and maybe we can lock this down. But really the inverse happened is once they got defensive lines and people were starting to realize that it needed to be a defensive war at this point, we're like
which screws up the whole plan.
The advantage of the defender was massive. And so that freed them up to basically dig in as they're moving backwards. You had rearguard reserve troops preparing defensive positions for them to retreat into.
Right.
And so much force could be spent up towards Belgium, towards like the race to the sea where the Germans were trying to get up in and basically flank around all the way up north and come back and smash everyone like a giant sledgehammer. It didn't really pan out.
Right. And then also, I mean, people forget how close run the almost defense of Paris was. I mean, their stories, like, they were literally putting guys in like taxi cabs and like driving them to the front.
Yeah,
Like it was pretty close.
They were Paris.
Was it the Battle of the Marne where they like
Paris was getting shelled?
Yeah.
For a long period of time. Like, these aren't cruise missiles. These aren't drones. They're cannons. They're big cannons. And like eventually when the German lines got pushed back, they were like, we'll just make bigger cannons so we can keep shelling Paris because isn't that fun?
Yeah, right. I mean, it
so,
was
so
imagine
the line
like,
got pushed back.
This is what comes when you talk about total.
So you build it. This is some Perturabo shit. They build an entire fucking rail network to move this giant cannon called like it was like Dicko Max, like Big Max, for Fat Max. So they built a fucking rail network to put a cannon so big it had to be mounted on train tracks. To then boogie that up just close enough to shell Paris from about 70 miles.
This is the kind of shit that America should be doing, and we can't do it anymore.
This is
the kind of thing where like we build a giant cannon and then build a giant railroad to move the giant cannon to shell a city in a war for unclear objectives. This is what it is to be great, and this is what we can't do anymore. Like when I say make America great again, this is what I have in mind. I want a giant railroad for a giant cannon to shell a city that I'm frankly indifferent about. That's what I want.
To fire shells that
for its own sake,
about 6 tons.
Right, but let's bring it back to the thing here. Why does any of this matter with regard to the heresy? Because you made an excellent point that really what happened is that this is what Angron did in Isfahan 3.
Right.
Because you have this thing. They're being wiped out. You got the
plan.
Right. There's a plan.
Melt them.
You're doing it. There's no casualties.
Yep.
And then Angron shows up with his giant, fuck huge chain axes,
right,
and decides that what we're going to do.
Thing
right.
The heresy is.
Gee, I wonder why.
Right. Unreliable allies. Fucking.
Right. Broken monsters.
Commanders.
Right.
Yep.
So what happens is Angron goes charging in melee and turns this thing into a pitched battle.
He's like, hey, fight me.
Which screws up the whole plan.
Right.
And then you have to waste time, and you lose guys, and you do all this kind of stuff.
Tied up down there too.
And this is the key. It's all about timing.
Yeah.
For the traitors, and just like it was for the Germans, the speed is the essence of the thing. Because any time wasted is
plan
defeat.
was 6 weeks maximum. The Western Front was supposed to be done in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
40 days tops.
They did it in 41.
Yeah, they did the second
Technology
time.
was a little better.
Well, I will wager this, and some may disagree, but I think historically speaking, the German army from the First World War beats the German army at the second.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
100%.
I mean, for the compared to the armies of its time, the German army of World War One is better than the German army of World War Two. I'll grant you that.
They had greater industrial capacity. They had way greater manpower capacity. They had a better
I suppose
culture.
you could just kind of overwhelm them.
A better culture of command behind them. Yeah, they would have done it. It's like, oh, we have, well, especially
you got Rommel and Heinz Guderian with the Panzers and stuff.
Right.
That would have been the end of it.
Where did they get good? Which side would they be on? Would they be on the first? They were good over there.
So if you're suggesting that they'd all be defecting, I suppose that changes things. I mean, half the German officer corps would have defected.
Panzer IIIs. It's like, cool, we have like 30 millimeter rifles.
Yeah, right.
So like whatever. Well, like we're not taking it all the way to the point where you got King Tigers, but we're gonna keep going.
Well, moving on though, I mean, we got to look at some of the other theaters too, and I suppose this would be some of the side theaters, especially when you look at Prospero, Mars, and it's kind of tough to do a 1-to-1 for that.
But I would to page 4.
Yes, but I would think that Prospero. What would you say was that the equivalent of that? The Ottomans. What was going on with Prospero?
Yeah, that or Italy,
because it was sort of a side quest.
So Italy was an enormous side quest.
Italy was a crazy side quest. The funny thing about Italy is originally they were supposed to be in alliance with the Central Powers, but of course that never made any sense because as an Italian, speaking as an Italian, the traditional enemy.
Speaking for all
Dagos.
Speaking for all Italians.
The traditional enemy of Italian unification was obviously Austria, and so the idea that you are going to be in alliance with these people is
historically
insane.
This is accurate. And this is a big problem that the Germans faced because all of their allies or would-be allies had
were terrible.
One militaristically
except
Bulgaria, but had massively conflicting war aims and goals.
Yeah,
right. So no one was really on the same page. Austria really wanted to subjugate Poland. Meanwhile, the Germans were like, no, we actually want a strong Poland because it's a nice little buffer zone between us and this goddamn,
And of course, we all remember Bismarck, Russia.
These people over here.
These people. That's what we're calling them now. We won't even say their name. But if you look at
over here that we sent there by train.
Remind what Bismarck said about the Balkans. I mean, what is it? The entirety of the Balkans are not with the bones of a Pomeranian grenadier.
You're right.
I mean, but why did Austria?
If something will destabilize Europe, it'll be some damn fool event in the Balkans.
Right. And why did ultimately Austria go to the mat over some damn fool thing in the Balkans?
Right. It's because I believe they were Bosnians backed by Serbia or Serbians backed by Bosnia. I can't remember.
Well, it was a Serb who assassinated the Archduke.
Right, the Archduke.
Right, but I mean that's a big deal. It's your fucking heir to the throne, but still.
Is Gavrilo Princip the Erebus of the situation? Like there's
some
planned
shit.
attack, there's plans of fucking assassination.
Wait a minute. No, shut up. This is important. The name of the Serbian terrorist organization, wasn't it called the Black Hand?
The Black Hand, homie.
And what does Erebus call himself? The Hand of Destiny. I rest my fucking case.
We're doing the Lord's work out here, folks.
This is why you come to us.
Truly.
No, I would think Prospero is probably the closest equivalent would be the Ottomans because it's far enough. You think it's Italy, actually.
I think
you think Italy? I mean, the wars that they fought in the mountains were probably the most insane battles of the entire thing. It's crazy what they went through there.
For decades afterwards, they would find people frozen in the ice on the Alps in perfectly preserved uniforms. Because there were guys from World War I that just froze to death up there.
And it was Caporetto, where the Italians lost an entire army in one day.
Well, that happened multiple times.
Yeah, well,
they really had poor luck.
We've been kind of on a losing streak
until they got to, I believe it was the Isonzo. Right, the Isonzo is where you had the first battle, the second battle, like the 8th.
I'm right.
The 11th battle of the
Caporetto.
Isonzo.
It's Caporetto. First battle of Caporetto, they lost. Yeah, to this day, it's still used by Italians as like disaster. So like you lose a soccer game or something, it's like it's another Caporetto or something.
It's another Showa. Caporetto.
Yes, they use it as like another Showa. That's the Italian Showa. They said Caporetto, the greatest defeat in Italian military history. The front completely collapsed. Yeah. And how many guys did they lose? It was the Italians had 257,000 personnel, and they lost 13,000 dead, and they were opposing 350,000, give or take. They lost 13,000 dead, 30,000 wounded, 265,000 to 275,000 captured. 300,000 stragglers, 50,000 deserters, 300,000 rifles lost. I mean, just like the whole front collapsed.
Yeah, just
total disaster. So, you're the Thousand Sons. in that situation. You just got
you're
basically broken because they were the closest to any traitor legion that basically got broken as a legion,
Right.
wiped out as a legion. I mean, they came within a whisker of like losing everything.
What was the one I thought?
So the Space Wolves in this case would
I had
be
one for 1,000 Suns.
the space.
Didn't get on here.
I mean, the problem, the imperfect thing, of course, is that the Italians were fighting for the Allies.
Well, I was thinking the 1,000 Suns were more like Bulgaria, because they were late to enter the war. They actually did some shit, but they had
there weren't that many of them.
There weren't that many of them. And they had their own ends that kept pulling
right.
them in a different direction. They did some.
So who are the Italians then in this? Because they're on the Allied side. Who is the? I guess that would be who would be the worst performing loyalist legion of the heresy? I guess is the true question. Not the ones who fucked everything up the worst, because that's clearly the Space Wolves.
The ones that were just bad at it.
Right. But the Space Wolves did stupid things because the plot required it, but they were good at doing the stupid things.
Right.
Like they
That's
won
true.
these battles. They were successful at doing the stupid
Their
things.
goal was to be stupid.
Right. The goal was to be stupid, and they succeeded. It's much like my own goal in life. But who was the one who actually failed? Would that be the Iron Hands, maybe? In terms of just like charging in and like getting wiped out. I mean, that's pretty close to the Italian experience in World War I. Where like you're sitting there, you're out of the war. You're out of the war, and you're sitting back and you're like, like Western civilization is destroying itself. We have no military strength to speak of. We have no industrialization. We're not prepared for this.
We need a 12th Battle of the Isonzo.
Our entire diplomatic situation has been on the other side up to this point. Yeah, we're doing this. Mussolini is like, let's go, guys. I will betray socialism just to get involved in this shit. And everybody, the nation as one, is like, this is a great idea.
This is great. And everyone claps.
That's actually what happened.
It is.
His whole life up to this point was being the most revolutionary socialist of all time. And then he looks at what's going on in the beginning of World War I and says, no, this shit.
This is it. This is actually cool.
Oh, good times. Gotta love Italian military history in the 20th century. Just one train wreck after another.
Yeah, it really went downhill. If only they could uphold the Venetian tradition, Those crossbowmen really.
Here's the other question then. I mean, again, you can't really do one-on-ones, right? But the closest thing to a civil war within a power, because that would be Mars, right? I mean, if you're talking about the loyalists and the traitors within Mars, hard to say. I mean, I suppose if you want it to be clever, and maybe this is a bit too much, I suppose you could say it was the question of international finance, because what fundamentally pushed America into the war, partially German just stupidity with the Zimmerman telegram, which was the dumbest thing anyone's ever done in history. But I mean, that's retarded. But one of the reasons, but the financial pressure, America wanted no part of World War I.
Said the Zimmerman telegram.
Yeah, right. America wanted no part of World War I. I mean, Wilson ran on keeping us out of the war, all this kind of stuff, and then, of course, he put us in the war.
Well, Wilson also had the biggest financial backing of any presidential candidate.
Well, this is the thing.
From a certain class of donors.
Well, that's my point, is that...
saying, by any means necessary, we'll get you in. You will be president as long as we get the Federal Reserve.
I mean, I suppose that it's an imperfect thing, but when you talk about what was the critical factor when all was said and done, it was America.
Yeah.
And... if Ultramar was Russia at the beginning of the war, at the end of the war, Ultramar is America. Because what ultimately wins the siege, so to speak, yes, of course, Horus Eyes and everything else, but really it's
the threat of not even arriving and being boots on, but the threat of them arriving and knowing that it was going to happen is pushing everything off. Because you look at the front, you're like, okay, well, who's going to be Dorn? Who's defending the shit? Well, it's Ferdinand Foch. It's the supreme commander of the Allied powers. And when they finally realize that, hey, we actually have to coordinate. And the English are probably still pissed about this to this day that a Frenchman took over it, even though it was. I guess
Ludendorff would be Horus, right?
Yeah, a couple ones for that. Ludendorff would be a good one for
Ludendorff. Well, the great thing about Ludendorff.
Well, I mean, Falkenhayn is clearly Perturabo. So, Falkenhayn.
Yeah.
If you want to look at this comparison here, so you got
Ludendorff.
You got Erich von Falkenhayn, who at the beginning of the war was like very face forward in this shit. Well, as they're going through Belgium and taking these Belgian not just towns, but also like fortifications, because this time the Belgians did have, sort of
pretty crazy forts.
Yeah, pretty crazy forts. They're like pseudo-imaginary line things, and the Germans would encounter it, and they'd be like, interesting.
extend the railway slightly more forward here, and we will bring up our rail-powered fucking cannons. And they would bring it up, and these things were like big enough that to shoot them, the crew had to be like a couple hundred yards away from the gun, and they fired it with like the Looney Tunes plunger, like to send the electric current in there to fire the shell off.
It's always important to find the comedy in the midst of
They really
civilizational
did.
tragedy.
So they're like, man, we have to get far enough away that it doesn't blow everyone's eyes and ears out.
Which means that somebody tried that once.
Yeah,
you know that
yeah,
happened
their
at least
fucking eyes
once,
and
and they
ears
were like,
blown.
"Oh shit!"
So they're wearing like the retard helmets, like with the cotton padding over their fucking eyes and ears. They have to keep their mouth open and yawn when they set this thing off because the explosion's so fucking big it'll blow their ears out from like 200 yards. So they fire this thing off and they have to wait like 4 or 5 minutes for the shell to impact. And then wait for the forward observer, or no, I believe it was like 60 seconds. But the time was waiting for the forward observer to report what had happened, that to get back to the telegram line, and the runner to come back out to where they were and tell them how to adjust the elevation of the gun. So they did this, and it fell short, but like blew a massive hole in like the earth. We're like, we'll raise it up. And they did it again. And then the third one, this took them some time. The third one they fired, like hit it, and like blew the whole face off of it. And they're like, cool, we'll call it a day. The other rail track's almost done. And in the morning, they had a second one of these things up there, and they just copied the ranging information from that to the other one, changed the elevation, started shelling it again, and then it just blew this whole fort up, like nobody died. Like none of the Germans did. Like this is like absolute Pearl Harbor bullshit.
Yeah.
But so Falcon 9 does this where before they had got these things there, and they were taking these forts by assault, and the scale of this shit is like absolute.
Ludendorff actually took one of them personally.
Yeah,
Early on.
when you look at the heresy stories.
Spear tip assault.
So you have these, and this is where you did have some level of Germans rushing in waves and getting killed. It was them rushing into these Belgian. Part of it is they call like the Belgian chocolate soldiers. They're like, you guys really, they're not going to put up a fight. Like they're not really a serious competitor here. It's not a big deal.
They did. And of
they
course,
did.
gallant little Belgium. That was a staple
Right.
of Allied propaganda.
Yeah, it really was.
Small nation. What's the?
Well, the beginning of the like age of atrocity propaganda against Germans. We're like,
so small nations might be free when they do that whole bit. That's all about Belgium.
That old chestnut.
Yeah.
But so you're coming through and you have these wave assaults, and so the bodies would pile high enough that like the pile of corpses was enough cover for people to hide behind from the machine guns.
Yeah, that's
like, well,
siege, that's some siege of terror.
Now we have to like
right there.
range our artillery back in to blow up these piles of dead bodies, so there's no cover for the advancing men to hide behind this pile of corpses that is thick enough that it will stop machine gun bullets, which is pretty extreme. So the end of taking one of these fortresses, it's like Falkenhayn himself comes up and like with the butt of his saber, like just bangs on the door to this fortress and is like,
Was that him? I thought that was Ludendorff.
that was Falkenhayn.
Falkenhayn. Huh.
He's like, yeah.
Stand corrected.
Gig's over. Surrender. They open it like a bunch of shell-shocked Belgians that already had like their ears and eyes blown out from all the shelling and
God,
shit.
can you
just
imagine
like-
how much it would suck to be trapped in these things?
like,
Like, you're just getting...
okay, so
But I mean, this is what
few of
happened
you
during
will-
the siege.
will maybe know what this is like, hopefully, but like, have you been in a car when a gun goes off? It's fucking loud. And like, like indoors, in a room when a gun goes. Imagine you're like in a giant concrete bunker.
Yeah.
And somebody shoots a gun out of there one time, you're like, holy fuck. And then someone's been shooting a machine gun out of there for 4 days. It's also getting shelled.
Yeah.
You have no ears left.
Well, that's one of
You are deaf.
the big parts of the siege is on the wall guns, where it talks about guys just losing their mind. They all go deaf.
Right.
They start
like
like
the
shaking
shockwaves of
nonstop.
concussions
Right.
are just like
they can't
absolute
sleep.
shell-shock.
Their
Yeah.
brain is just completely fried because it's an electromagnetic thing. Like what actually happens. I mean, one of the ways you can die is if a shell falls near enough to you, it creates like basically this kind of electric thing that fucks with your brain almost, and it just sort of like turns it off. So like the brain, you can't handle this kind of shock.
And it's the pressure.
Yeah.
So people with that, these fucking artillery shells were so big.
There's whole passages in the siege about
and
this.
so prevalent at this time, like both in the siege and and accounts from this war. People would be dead
I gotta find it.
with no obvious wounds on them, right? The repeated shockwaves from all these shells landing close enough to people without enough barrier between them, if you weren't adequately in cover, if you weren't dug in, if you weren't like in the burrows underneath the trench, which most of the time you weren't hiding from the shelling in the trench, right? The shelling, the trench let you shoot at people that were charging your trench. That was actually an engagement point. Most of the time you had these dugouts with fucking like deep defense in depth, like concrete underground bunkers or shit with logs over to protect you from the concussive blast of shelling. if you were out in it and you got a bunch of this, the shock wave from the shells going off, moving through your body, would like bruise and rupture parts of your intestine. So you would die like with not one hole in your body, no open bleed, but you would die of internal bleeding. Right. There's some shock waves passing through your fucking guts all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and you want to look at like, you know, scale and size of this. If you go back to, hopefully I didn't already throw this one, because there's some good ones on there. Yeah, so we look at, you know, talk about Valfalkenheim and being much like Perturabo. And you look at his main engineered engagement when he goes to start planning things, and they give him some authority, and he does Verdun. You know, Verdun's a pretty big one, and so Verdun's a salient. So if you think
a
like
battle of note,
right? The Battle of the Bulge type thing, where it's like, you know, if you have the Allied line coming out into pocket and it gets surrounded and it gets attacked kind of on all sides, and the goal is to surround it and force engagement in there. His plan was not to necessarily break the line there. It was that it was a stretch of line that had more surface area because it bulged outwards, so I can engage more of them at the same time. So his plan stated, the quote was, "I will bleed France white." The goal was to create such a protracted meat grinder that they had to keep sending bodies into that it would just exhaust them. It would break their morale. It would cost them too many men. It would break
almost did.
He was like, yeah, we'll just break their spirit of France by hitting this one place so fucking hard that they lose bodies. Some numbers from Verdun. This is a good one. So he has this whole plan, blah, 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 blah. Combined, you've got about 850,000 casualties. In this one battle,
the whole country would collapse.
Now, you know, this battle was over, you know, more of a period of time. It wasn't very quick. The Somme was faster. Verdun went from, God, what was that? I thought it was in my notes. Apparently, I didn't put it down. Here it is. So they started it in February of 1916, and it ended in December of 19. So 300 days. Like, they call it the Battle of something. That's just 300 days of it being shelled. 300 days of people charging and dying and everything. So you got, you know, almost 1 million casualties in this one section of front. That is about 20 kilometers.
Holy shit.
That is like the length of the front as it went. It was about 20 kilometers in length. You got 850,000 casualties. So that, if you take casualties and put it down to dead, which you got about 30% of all casualties were KIA. If you look at that World War I, that's pretty reliable. That's about 15 dead men per meter of front line. So like, as you're lined up in this line, every meter of ground you're standing on, you're on top of 15 dead people. If you line like this is the level.
Closing things of the Siege of Terror, where you have the skulls mounted up and the bodies are the walls and the barricades.
So you had, on the first day of Verdun, 2 million artillery shells were fired.
We don't even have 2 million artillery shells now. No. We couldn't make 2 million artillery shells in a year.
Over those 300 days, about 60 million artillery shells were fired over the length of the Battle of Verdun. 60 million. Try to top that one, Jews. It's a lot bigger than your 6 million, huh? That's a better number. But so that ends up being, if you look at the entire battlefield, including like no man's land, and when they advance, when they come back with the whole point of this, it ended up being about 6 shells per square meter.
Oh my god!
And most of these things have a radius of like fucking 30 meters.
Right.
So any square meter had about 6 artillery shells land. You know,
I mean, luckily you have.
It was more concentrated in some places than others, but like,
yeah, but you have 15 dead bodies you can take shelter in. I mean, that's something.
This is like the scale of like. You look at that and like, yeah, that's some Perturabo shit.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, yeah, we will just blast them and grind them and blast them and grind them.
The primary actors,
the casualty ratios on that, unfortunately, weren't that great. It was biased with like there were more German or more French and English casualties than German, but not significant numbers. The advantage was somehow at this point, while Germany is fighting everyone basically all by itself, and also because all their allies, they have to feed them.
Yeah.
They have to feed them troops. They have to give their officers over there to command the fronts because their allies are incapable of doing it. They have to give them material support. They have to give them personnel, like all this other shit. And so while this is going on, they're still maintaining the industrial capacity to shell more accurately at longer ranges and with greater effect than the combined Allied powers.
The Second Reich was peak.
Really,
in terms of like what they were able to do.
Yeah, you want to see like, you know, peak German efficiency and get this thing down to fucking time tables. So, you know, you look like the idea of the creeping barrage, right? They had this down to the science where it was, okay, everything's on timetables. We'll synchronize our watches. We'll do it like by pulse on Telegram, so it will be as fast as possible. Not like the Telegram that you get like your anime titties and like live league videos on, but like the dot dash over the wire Telegram. They'd synchronize all their watches and have this attack, and so the artillery would start to move first. And the idea was that it would just churn up the ground that had already been churned by too much other shells and make it kind of flat. It would be loose dirt, but it would be flat, and use certain kind of shells for those ranges. And then it would go on, it would destroy the barbed wire. But then we'd have enough going out further down the line that not only are we getting people to hide in the fucking trenches, but the idea was there's enough shockwave going out that you basically have like a void shield.
Wow.
That bullets were being deflected off course by like the density of the shelling, and machine gun rounds wouldn't really be able to get through this curtain of explosions. And then at the very last minute, like, people had to walk at a certain pace.
Because if you walk too fast, you're going to get caught up.
You're going to get caught in the fucking shrapnel. You're going to advance into it once they start switching their ranges, and the next battery behind that's already ranged in would fire. So this is like very,
yeah,
very
this is Pearl Rabo shit.
Yeah,
this is like Iron
down,
Warriors,
down
like
to the timetables, and this is much of how this shit was fought.
I mean, what was the first stage of the Siege of Terra is Perturabo doing these calculated bombardments to test the different parts of the Void Shield one by one, try to overload this part and that part. Of course, Angron is just like, let's attack right away. Fulgrim has other ideas, of course. Mortarion, we know what he's... Mortarion was obviously trying to undermine the morale of the defenders, and of course he has a lot of success with doing that. I guess... Here's one of the keys. If we say, okay, Thousand Suns would be, what did we decide for the Thousand Suns? They're Bulgaria.
I'll give Bulgaria.
Yeah, Bulgaria.
They were the last ones to join.
So let's smash these up, because this is part of the fun here. Who's who in terms of who is who? Because who would be Italy?
We're about through this page.
Who's Italy? Which traitor legion?
Oh, that's on the Allied side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get
that's a bit tough. Well, we said the Iron Hands.
Yeah. Iron Hands, who'd be the most useless of the loyalist legions,
right?
Is Italy in the war.
I mean, you could argue they did some stuff. Who would the Ottomans be?
Night Lords.
Yeah.
Yep, Night Lords. They were peripheral. They did some shit.
They did do some shit. They won at Gallipoli.
Right, yeah. They had a couple of things there. They controlled some avenues of transportation. They really were able to lock some forces up here and there. But they were a bigger liability.
The Lion is basically Lawrence of Arabia. Comes in and single-handedly fucks their shit.
Right, yeah. I mean, much of that is that. It's like, hey, their economy was shit.
All right, who's Austria-Hungary then?
Oh, God. They're also bad. I don't know if they were just like an anchor to be tied to from the get-go.
Well, if Germany...
Well, we already figured out, Well,
here's the thing. Here's the key. Because Germany, I mean, in theory, because they're the main players, it should be Sons of Horus. But from what you're telling me, they're closer to the Iron Warriors. So if we say, I mean, I would say Germany in this, if we take this metaphor, is sort of like a mix of the Iron Warriors and the Sons of Horus.
It would be a mix. The early war was Sons of Horus. The mid war would definitely be Iron Warriors, and towards the end,
and then the Stormtroopers would be Sons of Horus again.
Back to Sons of Horus again, because this is something very important. Is
those were your spear tip tactics?
Yeah. Blitzkrieg tactics in World War II, they weren't new. They were figured out fairly successfully in the First World War. The problem was the scale that they had to do this on. Mm-hmm. So you had things like they would go through and pull the most experienced and best trained men from every unit, and then form a separate division of just those guys, and form them as hey, here's our division of stormtroopers. We put all these dudes fucking together, and we'll give them these new submachine guns. We'll give them a bunch of fucking hand grenades. And we'll use infiltrator tactics. We won't do the preliminary bombardment. Let them sneak in tunnel and do all this bullshit to get in these positions. And they'll attack vulnerable points of the line and taking the whole thing. They'll just make a break. And when we start shelling them, we shell the support trenches. We go, if they attack here, if they're moving east or westward, as it were, we'll start shelling north and south of where they're at, so that you can't get reinforcements coming down to that point where they break the line. We'll shell the reinforcement trenches, but we won't actually bombard the areas where people are going to be. So we want to lock down the reinforcements to create the breaks and bust through their shit, and then move through and then send our other guys in. It worked really, really well. The problem is in all these major offensives is every casualty you had was your best guy over and over and over and fucking over again. And so you look at the end game, right? We get back to like the Kaiserschlacht, so like 1918 onwards. This was started in spring. And this is when the Germans were like, hey, this is our last ditch effort.
Yeah.
But we can get these offensives going and we can punch hard enough that we can basically break the spirit. And we need to do this before the Americans in earnest enter the war, right? As a parallel, this is like Horus dropping the shields on the vengeful spirit.
Right. This is the desperate gambit. Yes.
Right? He's like, this is the gambit. We can win this. We have to commit 100% all of the way.
Right.
So, it's a series of offensives. They call it the Kaiserschlacht, or like the Kaiser's Battle or Kaiser's War. So you look at about in a 4-month period of time, you got 1.6 million casualties.
I mean, just take a step. I mean, I know we're talking like about the details here and everything else, but like one of the things 40K does. Hang on. One of the things 40,
but at KIA rates,
30%,
that's 500,000 dead.
Yeah, and like one of the things 40K doesn't quite get. Sometimes
40K is bad at numbers.
Yeah, they're bad at scale. Like
scale
they will talk to like you'll be reading something about like a war on a planet, and it's like nothing compared to like the Battle of Kursk or like something like one battle in World War II.
Shit that actually happened.
Yeah, shit that actually happened. Like people are alive who fucking fought in it. Like still, they're wandering around, and they're like there were way more guys like who fought in this one fucking battle than took over this planet.
Like the perspective cap for people writing stories of like mass death and mass casualties and this shit happening like is World War One.
Yeah, I think it's
the only like, tangible reference point that we have.
Right,
it's the biggest concentrated loss of life in small areas in short periods of time.
And it's something we can't even begin to grasp. Like
you can't. Well,
think of how many people
consider the genetic consequences.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? Consider
we've never come back from it.
So this has been going on at this point of like the Kaiserschlacht, and you got new guys coming in here, and this is in spring of 1918. So we're just about 4 years into the war.
You got kids who were like 12 when this all started, or 13, 14, whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, people getting in there like 16, 17.
Yeah, right, at this point.
People faking
what does he
their
say,
age to go fight.
Remarque writes about that in, how Germany was basically just running out of people by the end.
Yeah. You had people faking their age to get in the war because they wanted to do it. So even 4 years in, and so you grow up the last 4 years, you're like, you're not starving, but you have things called
in Germany you are.
Not starving, but you have things called the turnip winter.
Yeah, right.
Because all of your potatoes and grain are being sent to the guys on the front,
and also you have the British blockade.
Right, and everyone's okay with that. So like, but yeah, we're gonna win though. We have to do this. Like this is. If we quit, if I bitch about this, I'm letting down everyone that's fucking died for it, and that's gay.
Yeah.
The people that waited 4 years through the war and are still joining up at the time of the Kaiserschlacht and this thing kicking off, who are deciding to be a part of this thing. Like, so those people and who they were, we've already covered this on the show a fair bit, and I think this is an idea that's not going to be foreign to you, but the idea that you are basically who you are at the moment of conception.
Yeah.
When your genes are ironed out and merged, most of your character traits, or at least the capabilities of yourself in extremes, are figured out. Right. You can train and condition yourself. You can learn things. You can.
You get the gene seed implant, and then you're
destined. You can modify who you are.
Your character. You figure out which legion you're assigned to, and you're pretty much rolling from there.
When a man hits 30,
you don't have that much choice in the matter.
When a man hits 30, he gets assigned to 40.
He picks one Ryan. The modern gene scene equivalent is he picks one Ryan Gosling movie to base his entire personality on, and then you just roll with that until you die.
Pretty much. But, so you have all these people like who were fucking kids and who saw this shit and saw the deprivations, the people coming back with their faces blown off and like horrible prosthetics, and guys with like their skin melted off their face from mustard gas to walk around like Deadpool with no mask, and it's just an absolute disaster. And they're like, yeah, but I need to do this.
I need to do that.
I need to do it. And they go. And then they die. And those genes stop.
Yep.
Dead ended.
Yep.
Right? And so that happened. Generation of this. Just fucking blasted all the way through. You're like, man, of an entire continent.
I mean,
you had a lot of this before and after. You had the Franco-Prussian War, you had the Balkan Wars, you had the Russo-Sino War. Like
nothing on this scale.
All of this shit is going on in the Napoleonic Wars and everything before. And like this level of conflict, not to this extreme. This should have been going on at such an intense and consistent level, where there was almost an acceptable level of churn, right? because the level of casualties weren't so high, you were mostly getting people who like at least would go, I'm gonna fucking squirt my load into some broad and then go fight the war. Mm-hmm. So like my genes are still here. At least if I die, like like teach.
I have other sons to carry forward my name.
Right, right. But like that was a very real fucking thing for most all of human history. Of like, well, I'm gonna go out and do this thing, but like, like eventually.
Now we make heroes out of the women who kill their kids. It's totally different.
Yeah. No,
don't forget to donate to the fundraiser, kids.
Yeah, pre or postpartum.
Right.
Apparently, fucking, they're still viable for abortion up to like 5 years out of the womb.
Mark my words, we'll see that within our lifetime.
The 25th trimester abortion. Well, you already got a lot of women advocating for that one, right?
God, it's just going downhill.
Anyway. She was sad. She should strangle her kids.
I mean, if she had just killed puppies, like the same people who are like giving her money would demanding she die.
Pitbull puppies.
Yes, pitbull puppies. Yeah, we can't hurt the precious pitbull puppies.
You can't hurt the pibbles.
Poor Pibbles. He's got a little flower crown.
Oh, he's got a good heart. So people forget
it's the owner, not the breed.
Yeah. Like, people forget the guy that created Pitbulls had like both his kids mauled by him and his 2-year-old nephew eaten by his fucking dogs. And like, sure, he put those dogs down, but he kept breeding them.
But my little Cyber Mastiff is great. Like he would never. Yeah. He's got an implant for kids.
Cyber Mastiff probably wouldn't.
Yeah, the Cyber Mastiff actually would be much less.
Gone off. You know,
but moving back to the core
thing. The guy like trying to shove his thumb up the dog's asshole to get it to stop biting the kid.
One of the parallels here, though. Switch. One of the parallels here is in the Siege of Terra, in what I think is strong contender for the best book in that series, in the Siege, that is Warhawk. And one of the things that you learn is that toward the end of both sides, traitor and loyalist, they're grabbing kids basically. From various worlds, sometimes worlds that are about to fall. They're kidnapping them and like running, trying to fly wherever they're going.
Space King.
Yeah, basically.
They're stealing the
little they're boys. Basically doing that. And they're putting them through accelerated training. And so like the casualty rates are a lot higher because like, it's not mapped up. Maybe they're too young, maybe whatever. And they're just kind of like, no, you got to go. And there are some things where it's like there's one account where you have these guys who are sons of Horus who are not even from Catonia,
right? And
they're just getting like fed in, and of course, right? And they just get like blown apart and everything else because they don't know what they're doing. But some of the White Scars who go through it, they're sped up, and of course, you can imagine guy gets brought in. The equivalent would be like a guy who's been in the war for how long.
White Scars getting sped up. What are they advanced twice?
Yeah, right.
Phase,
right. How's that work? But imagine like a veteran. A German veteran who's looking at like the 16-year-old who's just in this like last battle, like, really, we're doing this? But then he goes through it. And now it doesn't matter if you're 27 or if you're 17 because you just went through this.
Right.
And you both are equivalent. And this is what's happening to the Legionnaires at the Siege, where you have these guys who have been pushed through with little training compared to other... I mean, they're still fucking Space Marines.
Right.
But they're getting pushed through with little training. But once you've been in the Siege for like a week... You've seen shit that nobody else has seen.
Right.
You're head and shoulders above every other Legion out there because you've been through this. And that's what's happening in 1918.
And that's exactly where I push back on the idea that Germany had or was about to win the war and then they surrendered too early or had this opportunity, is that they had broken down not the chain of command but like the transmission of experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is always the critical thing.
By pulling their best and their brightest off. And then putting them into, being the most vulnerable target, or not most vulnerable, but like most attention applied to target.
That's the traditional critique of like elite units, right? I mean, if you look at like Napoleon with the Imperial Guard, you could argue that like, well, you don't want to take your most experienced, bravest guys and put them in their own thing.
Right.
You want to keep them in the units so they can train the new guys.
Right.
And keep their courage up and do stuff like that.
So you had this huge break there, and so it was a line of experience in veteranship, which was passed down over and over. And this is I had this old book, I read it a while ago. It's called The Cross of Iron. Mm-hmm. A really good book, but it examines mostly through World War I and then partially into World War II the role of the officer cadre in from Imperial German up to Third Reich, it really does a good job paying attention to the role of the staff NCO.
And which is always the critical thing.
Right. And how it was sort of neglected towards the end of the First World War, and then very much so in the Second. Where beforehand it was like, hey, this is this is your way of communicating experience.
Right.
This is your way of passing down knowledge that you've learned, consequences that you've seen, like your little tidbits. Yet you're getting these orders from up here.
Yeah, right.
But you have to act on those orders. That's strategy. This is tactics.
Yeah, right.
This is your job, you know? And when you pair all those guys off, that's when you get the horde of 16-year-olds charging into machine guns.
Right.
Because there's no one there to tell them not to. Or there's no one there to be like, yeah, they're going to say we go over the top. You don't got to do it like this, right? You can stay in the holes. You can move around. You can like move kind of slow. You can get there. You can link up with your buddies. And like once we get close enough, let's all start fucking chucking grenades and we'll go.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like link arms and run and like camaraderie and fucking, you know, sing the songs and go and then just get fucking cut in half.
Right.
By 308s. Like not ideal. That was a pretty big loss. And that's really the thing that sticks to me on this is.
Well, this is
it's
also
like,
in
like
both World War One,
the loss of Gene Seed.
Yeah,
you know, if you want to call it that, is like that level of human spirit and willingness to be like a man of the frontier,
right?
To be someone who will leave
this
civilization to
do you buy
willfully
that?
Become the barbarian.
Do you buy that there's, because I've heard this argument before, that the types that war is dysgenic, that you could argue that there was a time when war was eugenic, but now war is dysgenic because, or at least it was then, because what you're doing is it's actually the bravest people who die. The people who are the most patriotic, the most noble, the most self-sacrificing, the people you want, they're the ones who die. And basically the cowards and the shirkers and everybody else are the ones who are left behind. That always seemed a little pat to me. But when you're talking, but the thing is,
recurs,
when you're,
you know, so
it would be,
it can't be absolute, right?
No, it can't be absolute.
Because
but when you look at,
continue
when you look at
history.
the scale with something like World War One, even though it seems simplistic, even though it seems pat, even though it may even seem insulting to a lot of people, although I don't know how many World War One vets there are still running around out there.
If there are any World War One vets,
yeah, we're sorry,
but no, honestly, like
you survived, you coward. But no,
shoot me a message. I'll like mail you most all of my stuff. That's just cool.
But the key is this: almost by definition, like everybody was in,
right?
So you almost. That thesis actually does make a certain amount of sense, because if you could walk, you were going to die.
Right. The emergence of the idea of the home front in a war.
Right. Well, this is where Ludendorff,
and that's a target that could be targeted. That came up,
which of course has huge consequences in the Second World War. When you
had
the
beginning of airplane bombings, you have shelling of civilian areas. You have the U-boat campaign, which is like dramatically successful. And this was a legitimate criticism of the German Navy at the time and of their high command, is the debating of should we or shouldn't we use unrestricted U-boat warfare. Because we can deny material possessions of the French. We can deny English troops making their way across the channel. We can do all this shit. And they kept being like, people keep getting mad at us when we do it, so we should stop. And then they like use gas. And everyone gets mad about them at the gas. And like, okay, we won't. We go back to the boats. And it's like, you know, you could have gone in all the way, and things might have been a bit different. In terms of the idea of whether or not it is like a finite, or like a proportion of the population that is dying in war in this way, that is pulling the genes out, I think, you know, and this might be like a little frou-frou or whatever for a lot of people, but I generally think there is almost like a scale of like a collective capacitance for like human spirit and consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have these stories of like the old days, and everyone is like a fucking stud. And there's still normal people in there, but the normal people from the old days would be a fucking stud today because there's too many people. That same level of like of thumos, right, of spirit, of vril, you know, whatever you want to call it, is getting spread and diluted across so many extra millions and billions of fucking people, as opposed to like, you know, maybe 5 million total. Now it's going across like, how many billion are we at, Kev?
What, total?
Yeah, total people.
7 billion, I think.
7 billion versus like, 5 million. You know, so we're going to like dilute it by orders of magnitude. And I think there is definitely an element.
8.3 billion. 8.3 billion.
Fuck's sake, and so many of them are Indian.
I know.
So many are Indian. We really have this thing where like, I think, like anything that is this prolific in nature, if you look at, you know, ants, and I'm not talking about the Chinese, I'm talking about the actual ants, this isn't a metaphor. If you look at all these other species that They will sense environmental pressures or create their own pressures to control their population without things being imposed upon them.
Yeah,
right?
they talk about in the
We look
siege
at-
too. This idea of
and
like
people will talk about this with like miscarriage rates.
Right.
Right now they're like astronomically higher than they have been in the past. And of course, everyone wants to be like, "Oh, it's the vax, it's the clot shot." I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that was definitely a part of it, and it was definitely a part of it as it was going on at the time. But that trend had been increasing beforehand. And I don't think it's just microplastics. I don't think it's just fucking vaccines. I don't think it's all this other shit going on that like is it's not fucking seed oils, you cunt. Like these things that are invoked to complain about is because people are unwilling to acknowledge that there is a spiritual side of life. Not like the spirit, mind, and body are very connected. There is too much humanity sucking up too little human spirit all the way across the board. And as a consequence, you're being sterilized.
yeah. I think that is
If
what's
your
happening.
spirit is fucking weak, you're getting these problems. And even if your spirit is good and you should be able to fucking reproduce, sorry, there's just too many people. There's a solution to this. Bulldozers, pits, uniforms, and shooting people that look maybe kind of like you but are wearing a slightly different color uniform.
Yeah,
this
but
is
I mean,
this is the European tradition.
Right, but if you
Your
think,
uniform is a
Yeah,
slightly
but
different
here's-
color than
but-
me. Your language is a little bit different.
Yeah, but
And I'll shoot you
the
over.
whole point of World War One is that it was completely stupid, and what got wiped out was precisely the best. Like this is actually the opposite of what the conclusion should be. Is that the whole point is that it shouldn't
But
have
it
happened
happens
the
when
same
things
way.
reach critical mass.
Yeah,
I think
if-
you have a period of successful imperialism, of agrarian revolution, of early industrial revolution, of society reaching this tipping point where like you had growth to the point that there was just too much shit going on, and there was a culling.
See, I don't think that there actually was a culling. I think that it was.
It's been about 100 years.
It was
and we're due for a culling.
no, but here's
Like not in the West, like
right
globally,
but-
100%.
Yeah, right. But if you look at where European society was,
Like everywhere between like
hang on,
between India and Vietnam.
right, but they don't matter. If you look at where European society was in 1913, you had extremely militarized societies. You had cultures that were very strong, very self-confident. You had national leadership that understood that war was the main purpose of the state, and that fundamentally, like the reason we have a state is for the waging of war, and everybody took this for granted, and this is how it is, and everything else. And what ends up, I think, what you want, like as a social ideal, is you want a population that's insanely patriotic and militaristic and ready to fight. And what you want is a leadership that's like, no. Relax.
Right.
Like, we're not going to do this unless it's like really, really important, because this is an important resource. And what ended up happening is everybody was geared up for it. They all marched off to war singing songs. They all turned their back on the communist revolution. The German SPD famously, supported the Kaiser and supported the war and everything else. Mussolini, of course, switched sides so he could support the war.
For a time. The SPD supported it for a time.
Right, for a time, yeah. But what ended up happening was that it was so disproportionate to what was gained. And the leaders at the beginning, none of the leaders at the beginning of the war, if they could have seen into the future, even 2 years into the future, would have started the war.
Well,
they all would have been like, no, we're not doing this.
Also, no one leading the war in terms of the actual commanders or battlefront.
Right, but there was
were
no
involved with it towards the end.
Right, but
the churn rate of leadership was
the point is that there was nothing. There's a certain appeal in this idea of total dedication to something, and we can almost look with awe. I mean, Junger has this great quote where he says, "The idea of the fatherland will be gone, and people will look to us with envy, the way we look to the saints."
Right.
Because like you can be like whatever religion you want, but you're not.
100%
You don't
correct.
have the kind of faith that like Joan of Arc did.
Right.
Like you just don't.
They
It
did.
doesn't. There's not a single
They
person
did. You
alive.
don't have that.
They felt that way about their country,
Yeah.
and there's not a person alive who feels that way about their country today. It's just, and it's not because like you're good or bad or whatever. It's just a totally different mindset that can
it
only
doesn't
come from
exist
that
for
place.
you.
And this is the key here to bring it to the core thing. Is this is what was essentially lost with the Imperium, with the heresy, because this idea of we are fundamentally on the upward slope. Humankind is about to step into greatness and everything else. Okay, there's this treason, there's the heresy. It's bad, but we're going to finish it.
All people, we're passing out.
Right, but like once we win the war, we're going to put everything right.
Right.
But then after you go through everything, it was like, no. No. The dream is broken.
Right.
And also the dream was a lie, and we're never bringing it back. That's what happened to the West with World War I. That's why all these subversive ideologies grew afterwards. That's why the traditional elites were like forever discredited. I mean, there was no way you could even allow a militarized aristocracy to put itself at the head of Europe.
Right.
Because nobody would believe it. I mean, even the ones, and you were like, oh yeah, but then World War II happened. Yeah, notice the Third Reich, the fascists. If you look at basically all of the movements that grew up and ended up joining the Axis powers, and a lot of the ones who probably would have had they not Axis powers not like invaded them first, like in Greece and everything else, they all framed themselves as like proletarian movements, as workers' movements. When Mussolini declared war, hang on, this is important. Yeah. When Mussolini declared war on Britain and France, he said, what did he say? He said, Italy, free and proletarian, takes up arms against the reactionary plutocracies of the West.
Right.
So like, even what we think of as like the far right today was framing it as like, we're fighting for the oppressed, we're fighting against the aristocracy.
I think here's the difference in that sense, and it's something that was very lost.
I'm trying to find this great quote about the Astartes. Go ahead, keep going.
It's the idea that imperialism as a legacy, when we get to the Second World War, we're not going to keep going. We're probably very deep in time. I'm not sure where we're at.
Yeah, I'll just keep going.
But I really don't give a shit. You guys are just getting a long one. Keep going. Like, enjoy it. As we get to the Second World War, this idea is that imperialism for the legacy imperial powers, the ones that were allowed to keep doing it and allowed to get away with it, they weren't really checking themselves on it, right?
Right.
They had imperial territories, they made imperial gains, and they were making money. And the money didn't come to the empire. The money came to like a select class or a select group within the empire. When you look at, the idea of, a proletariat base, or really like these fascist movements, the promise was imperialism, but we'll give you the spoils of war. Right? Mm-hmm. I think really that's the big difference, is imperialism not just for like the current ruling or noble class or to prop up the state of this existence, but we will take plunder and then distribute it to you, the people. There's Bane posting, honestly.
Yeah, right.
But in a real sense, it's like, look at Japan's entire arc.
Yeah.
Right? They're like the last ones to arrive to this cult of
they were in the Allies in World War I.
Of imperialism, right? Yeah, on happenstance. Really, they were just fucking trying to take advantage of the situation for their own personal. They were on their shit from then.
Yeah, right.
I'm convinced. And this is like not a denigration of their role in that, but it was just more like it was already kind of their plot of, hey, we're really behind the eight ball on being imperial powers. And we see the people who are in charge now, like who are making the decisions, and the movers and shakers on the world scale, and they're very good at this whole imperialism thing. We need to do this. Our best way to do this is we'll get in this war late. We'll throw our weight behind whatever. We'll do whatever we can. But then when the treaties are signed, we'll get some territory. And that'll be nice for us because we just got some territory off Russia. And that was really cool for us, because Russia got fucking just utterly drubbed by like fresh out of the Iron Age Japan.
Right. Well, this is the critical thing. And this is the point I wanted to make. What really happened to the West with World War I, and I think this is the overall takeaway, and also what happened to the Imperium. This is from End of the Death, Book 2, where it says, in the midst of it all, in the heart of the burning palace, certain moments pass virtually unnoticed, moments of profound significance, whose ramifications will change everything, but which are lost in the fog and the filth and the derangement. One is the end of the primacy of the human Imperium. It has been ascendant for nearly 3 centuries. Pretty about close to like Europe's ascendancy when you think about it. I mean, what? About that time, right? Mm-hmm. 3 centuries, a cultural edifice that has encompassed thousands of worlds, the single greatest military power in the galaxy. That military power, that prowess, the legend of the indomitable Astartes, Indo-Europeans, the inexhaustible army, the matchless fleets, is both the symbol and the reason for its supremacy. Somewhere in the smoking darkness, in an instant that flits by unnoticed, that changes. The Imperial war machine stops. It keeps fighting, and fighting valiantly, but there is a shift in its collective mindset. It is no longer the greatest thing. It has met something greater. The greater something is not military at all, and is ultimately immune from injury, no matter how many rounds and rockets and missiles and shells are thrown at it. It is a slow, corrosive, existential dissonance that will not be fully recognized for decades or even centuries. The great Imperium, if it survives this day, may continue to fight or even dominate, but it is no longer supreme. It has met its match, and its mass is an immortal, unbridled force that almost no one had realized was there. The Imperium's idea of itself has been broken forever. Yep. That is what World War I was about. Yeah, that's what happened with the Horus Heresy.
That's the consequence right there.
I mean, that just perfectly describes everything.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
That's what it was. And again,
this is what happens when I prep. He thinks about some book that he read, fucking nerd, and pulls it out of his ass, and then pulls a quote. It's like, oh, this is really good. It's not even in my prep.
That the phone. The phone was in my ass to begin with. But like that.
That's why I kept calling it.
That's why I was rummaging around back here at the beginning. That's why I have the desk. I mean, it's very important.
If we're gonna get back to like a historical point, and like I feel like there's been a nice balance, a nice little bit of back and forth here. I think there are some key takeaways on this. That, you know, for most of our audience, about 60% is American, which I would say like is actually much lower than what I anticipated. Apparently a bunch of you like weird Euros with no air conditioning can still
have internet there.
Well, apparently you have internet and like good.
Maybe taste. Like pigeons are coming, like flying it over. That's why
the podcast carrier.
They've got like little tapes, like the old tapes are playing up.
The servo skulls.
There's one tape player in the center of town. I think that's how it works.
But so to make up for just digging on you poor unconditioned Europeans, here's a dig for a lot of the Americans that you guys aren't really going to like that much. And you know, sorry, Kev, but I feel like that's very accurate. The American war, or the American role in the First World War, was negligible. It was the threat of our involvement in the eventual mobilization and our application of our material goods that was a problem. Our success, as we face, you know, as we experience, like, okay, the wars, what do you have? You have the Roaring 20s, right? What is that? Well, we loaned a shit ton of money. We made a bunch of stuff and we shipped it over there. And basically we were a giant vacuum. And we sucked every piece of wealth out of the old world into America. Because they were selling everything.
And then we finished it off in World War II.
They were selling everything. They were indebting themselves. Look, it was maybe 10 years ago, France paid back the first of the loans that they took out for the First World War. It's like over 100 years later, they've paid back.
Isn't that true of Britain, too?
The first of one of those loans. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. But, FDR gave Britain like a bunch of rundown destroyers.
So
for,
after
like,
this,
empire.
we have like Wall Street blow up and like the financial sector. It's not in London anymore. Now it's in Wall Street in America. And we have all this money and like we're lending things on credit. And like, oh, wow, like everyone's really doing well. And then we blew it. And like, what was it? It's like, cool. We got like a PPP loan. America as a country started Lobster LLC.
Yeah.
We got nigger rich for about a decade. But we had no idea how to use any of it because we had no old money. We had no culture of this. We had no idea of how to manage this shit. And we blew it.
Yeah.
We blew it.
Yeah.
As a country.
What have we actually done with our superpower status?
I know. What if instead of like and here's like a Caleb Hammer financial audit moment, like what if instead of like spending all of this money that you got in war debt from Europe on like a new Mustang and like fake nails, if you put it in the S&P 500, America?
Yeah, right.
What if you had done that? But it really is the idea of, I mean, to take the jokes out, the idea of, and this is a very boomerist thing and something that I think we need to break ourselves of as a people and as a movement and as a civilization is these like trappings of boomerism that it's really holding everyone back and is really painting like a falsely propaganda view. I do believe propaganda has a very good purpose, as our whole last episode was largely about propaganda being used well and successfully towards positive goals. I feel like the boomer propaganda, what was presented to them and what they parrot back to us today, is not positive and does not work towards a goal. The idea of bootstrapping. We did not bootstrap. We saw an opportunity, and we took people's shit and we used it to better ourselves. We took their stuff from over there, we brought it over here, we made it our shit. And yeah, that was like off lending and leasing from Europe to support them, and eventually we put bodies over there, but we profiteered off that. We said, we're going to take your shit and make it our shit. We're going to give it to some of our people, and we're going to make things better for that. There was no bootstrap moment, right? We didn't just, through industry and hard work, like pull ourselves into the roaring 20s, into this time period, that we suddenly got this massive cash injection that no one could explain outside of like war profiteering. And that's not bad. That's not an indictment of it. But that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be honest about how we got to this point,
right? But that's how these things happen, and there's nothing fucking wrong with that. I think most of the critiques of from our side, from the right and from the left, and from everyone in the middle, most of the critiques when you have this of the American government, the American empire, and American regime, is the dishonesty.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that rubs everybody
That's the biggest
wrong.
one. If you're like,
that's why we love the Imperium, is that it's honest
listen,
about what it is.
We're gonna bomb you because we want your shit.
That makes more sense.
You got oil and you got rare earth minerals over there, and we're gonna blow you up until you give it to us at a better rate.
Yeah, that would actually be good. Yeah,
I'd be stoked.
That's how the Europeans used to handle business in the 19th century.
Yeah. Instead, it's like, hey,
democracy and feminism.
You got a lot of women over there in burqas, and if we could get them in like Abercrombie jeans and put iPhones in their hands,
right?
Then
we can have them kill their kids
peace.
and run fundraisers for them, which is like what we want to do. I mean, that's why we've been put here.
Then we could watch the riveting like Al Jazeera TikTok footage of like, El Hadim Clancero and her husband. Why fucking? God, I can't even do the bit.
Moving on.
It's too bad.
No, but here's the critical thing is that with the situation with World War One and the most obvious parallel between World War One and heresy, obviously this idea of a society being turned entirely with total war. This was not true of the Imperium at the end of the Great Crusade. It was always true of the legions.
Right.
And the key is that even though the legions were broken by the heresy, sort of the way that the samurai were broken during the Meiji, restoration,
the restoration period, right?
But then what they were broken, but the solution was to make the whole nation samurai. Right. To make like the peasants have the samurai spirit of everything else.
To change what samurai meant.
Right.
To change what the
that is what happened.
were.
That is what happened to the Imperium because the legions were broken. But now every single person, your purpose as a citizen of the Imperium is war. And that's it. War for its own sake. And there's this great passage when Sigismund is fighting Karn. And Karn has this vision, and he says he has this, even in the midst of his madness and possessed by the god of blood and everything else, he has this vision of the warriors just like Sigismund marching out of these fastnesses of unremitting bleakness. I'm just doing this from memory here, but it made such an impression on me. And he saw how powerful that could be and how long it could last and how it would inflict fresh miseries on a galaxy like already buckling under it. And even Karn the Faithful, as he is called, shuddered to his core. And he like fights against that, and of course he loses.
Yeah.
And that's what the Imperium is it's war for its own sake. It's war as an end to itself, which in the end, that is what Ludendorff ended up praising.
Right.
As like the model. Ludendorff even said like, we need to get rid of Christianity. We need to like have a warrior. He wanted to bring like Wotanism as like
anything that is in the way of mass industrialized war.
It's war. It's war. It's war. It's war. That, and he got into all this crazy occult stuff and everything else. Like that is what we do. But to some extent, that is what the European powers. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but certainly during the war, and even America when we got involved in the war. If you look at how America was governing itself at that time, the propaganda and everything else, the entire resources of society were mobilized just for the war.
Yeah.
And that was the reason you were alive.
The entire civilization.
That is what the Imperium did, and it destroyed against itself.
Right.
And that's why it never recovered. And in the end,
that it never stopped.
Right, and it never stopped doing. That's what the Imperium still is.
Right.
To some extent, the Imperium is basically still fighting World War One.
Yeah.
Now what happened to us is we destroyed our faith in ourselves. We destroyed our own identity. We certainly destroyed the old world. You could argue America got like benefited from it.
We destroyed our warrior caste.
Right. We destroyed everything else.
But we didn't our Our identity.
But I would say what we came out of with it is even worse than what happened with the Imperium, because the Imperium is just fighting. They're both fighting the long war. Like, and there's the thing with a war is that it may be horrible, it may be nightmarish, it may suck, but at least you know you're on a side and you're trying to win. You're not fighting a war. You may be fighting a losing war, but you're not trying to lose.
At least you're told you're fighting a war.
Right. Yeah, it's like that Oceania or something, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is what we have now is like we are actually the great and the good of our society. We're so demoralized and so broken by what World War I was. They decided, and I think even especially with World War II as well, but I think it would have been the same with World War I. It was precisely the educated classes, the leadership that decided our society needs to be destroyed. It's a good thing. Yep. And that's what we've been dealing with for 100 years. Yeah. So I think that's a good place to end it.
Well, we did it. There's your World War I episode.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate you sticking with us.
World War II. World War